Chapter 621. It was 2 days later when the 9 regions people left the tombs of immortals. The city of immortals was magnificent and had many facilities. Even if it was just a cursory tour, it would take a lot of time. Not to mention that they had experienced 2 fierce battles in the arena in the center of the city, and the second one was particularly protracted. However, this long protracted battle had achieved gratifying results. The result of 1 win and 1 loss could be said to be not too bad. However, the win was already soul-stirring and the loss was even more so. As long as they thought of the situation in the second match, the Supremes could not help but laugh. After Wang Lu used all his means and traps to force Bai Zhe into a sorry state, he threw the white flag and gave up. It was just that, when he left he was very quiet, deliberately leaving Bai Zhe to roar in the arena for half a day. In the end, it was his Dixian companion who couldn't stand it anymore and came in to remind him that the battle was over. And at that time, Bai Zhe's expression was really worth the people in the arena to ponder for a long time, because it was hard to imagine that an immortal cultivator who had achieved the achievements of Dixian would show such a desperate, crazy, and distorted expression. Were it not for the fact that Dixian had a stable immortal heart, perhaps when he walked out of the arena, Bai Zhe's immortal heart would have collapsed and his primordial spirit would have collapsed. At least, the several Supremes present asked themselves that if they were in his place and were played like this, moreover, it was under the watchful eyes of the public, perhaps it would be very difficult for them to have the face to live in this world. Wang Lu, this kid is really shrewd. A Supreme of 9 regions sincerely sighed with emotion. Yes, although his cultivation base is also very strong, it's actually secondary. Another Supreme deeply felt the same way. In the battle against Shen Mo and Bai Zhe, Wang Lu showed shocking strength. In the first match against Shen Mo, his crushing posture left a deep impression on everyone. However, what was really worth paying attention to was the second battle. From the very beginning he had no chance of winning against Bai Zhe. There was a world of difference in strength and his opponent was not as easy to talk to as Shen Mo. However, Wang Lu had forcefully obtained a victory under such circumstances. That's right. Although it seemed that Wang Lu had given up and admitted defeat, anyone with eyes would know who the winner of that battle was. The meticulous and comprehensive pre-battle preparations, the interlocking traps, and the strategy of withdrawing and retreating at the right time were all the embodiment of battle wisdom. This kind of wisdom was definitely not just a flash of inspiration. In essence, it was a sea of calculations. A quick-witted person might not be scary, but a quick-witted person who was good at scheming was too scary. Lingjian School is really lucky. With such a disciple, the school will surely prosper in the next 100 years. They are full of talents. In addition to Wang Lu, the Zhu Shiyao and Lu Li also have peerless aptitude. In terms of cultivation they are not much inferior to Wang Lu. It's just that they lack his talent. Alas, in the past decades there have been many talented young cultivators in 9 regions, but there are not many who can really stand out. Unfortunately, our sect has tens of thousands of cultivators, but we don't even have such a disciple. Haha, fellow Taoist, you're belittling yourself. Your disciple Qing Yangzi is superior, not necessarily inferior to the lead disciples of the 5 uniques. I don't know how many people are envious of him. Upon hearing this, that Supreme shook his head. Originally, I did have high hopes for Qing Yangzi and I was even complacent. However, after seeing Wang Lu today, with that, several other Supremes shook their heads. Each of them had a similar genius disciple, whose strength was far beyond that of their peers, worthy to be the future leader of a high-rank sect. However, compared with today's Wang Lu, the gap was too obvious. On the other side, Wang Lu himself couldn't be complacent at all. It was natural for him to perform better than his peers, because he was not really a peer in the real sense. He used to be the big brother of the golden generation of Lingjian School, a cultivator of the same generation as Feng Yin and the others. What was there to be proud of when he crushed a group of juniors? Moreover, in the eyes of others, his second fight was soul-stirring and skillful. But in the end he still lost. He had done his best in that fight. Whether it was the calculation before the fight or the means during the fight, he had done his best. Moreover, he rarely used a large number of external objects. The 3 golden thunder cones and the exterminate immortal powder were rare goods that he had spent a huge amount of public funds to raise. Even so, he could only force Bai Zhe into a sorry state. He couldn't really defeat his opponent. From the beginning to the end, he didn't even dare to let the opponent's negation seal hit him. Because he knew that he couldn't take it. The gap between Dixian and King Pill was so big that it almost made people desperate. However, Wang Lu would never easily despair. On the way back he repeatedly thought about it and in his heart there was a bit more hope. Compared to 3 months ago there's a world of difference. 3 months ago I thought that only Wang Wu had a chance to win in this King Pill group. The others were simply sent to die. But today, I after all have 1 win and 1 loss. And in terms of pure fighting power, I'm not the undisputed number 1 in the King Pill group. The gap between me and Zhu Shiyao and Qianghua is only a hair's breadth. If I could have more time. Wang Lu further thought that if he could have a few more months to cultivate so that his non-phase method and primal chaos heaven-splitting sword could be promoted by several layers. Was there a second possibility in the last fight? Yes, in the fight with Bai Zhe he was actually very close to victory. If he could consolidate his strength and sublimate it, unfortunately there's no time. Fortunately they don't have time. In the group of immortal tombs, Dixian were also summarizing the gains and losses of the 2 fights. The first to speak was Xian Mo. Although she lost to Wang Lu in the fight, compared to Bai Zhe in the second fight, she won more recognition as the loser. Therefore the concluding speech was also made by her. At this time Xian Mo's face was solemn, and her expression was so cold that it could freeze the air, which was completely opposite to her previous gentle and elegant posture. They have shown a shocking rate of improvement. I even regret giving them 3 months to prepare for the battle. But this kind of regret is meaningless. What we need to do next is prepare to win every match and put an end to this pointless dispute. On the fighting side, according to today's 2 fights, they are running out of time. Wang Lu will not fight a fight that he is not sure of. The strength that he showed today should be the best card he has. There were only a few days left and it wasn't enough. As for the literary competition. With that, Xian Mo turned her gaze to one side. Luo Shui, how is your preparation? Is there any problem? A petite girl smiled sweetly. Don't worry. Xian Mo sighed. Fortunately we have you. If you didn't wake up, we really don't have the confidence to compete with the entire cultivators of 9 regions. Luo Shui smiled. With me there's definitely no problem in the literary competition. At this time a Dixian asked, although there's no doubt about Luo Shui's strength, there are so many things that need to be tested. Can she do it alone? Before his voice fell, they heard a charming girl's laughter. What do you mean by alone? A petite figure quietly appeared behind that Dixian and gently patted his shoulder. It was another Luo Shui. The number of people has never been a problem. While speaking, the third Luo Shui quietly appeared, and then the fourth, the fifth. There are less than 100 of our resuscitation companions, and less than half of them can be used. It's far from enough to compete with a large team of more than 2,000 people. Fortunately, they asked for a graded competition, dividing most of the events into different levels. Actually, this is actually beneficial to us. Yes, that's why I'm really looking forward to the grand competition in a few days. Yes, I'm looking forward to the official start of the grand competition. I'm looking forward to it. In Wang Lu's office in the lava valley behind Royal Soldier Sect, an uninvited guest in white constantly hindered the normal official business with all kinds of moaning and moaning. Soon, the owner of the office slapped the table to stop him and said, "Enough, you unruly person, get out of here. F***, you dog official, how could you be so arrogant and rude to the literary and artistic workers of 9 regions? How can a lowly person like you be considered a member of the literary circle? I'm the most popular idol of the year. I don't know how many young and ignorant cultivators call my name in their dreams. Murong Bing Li Night Charm Phoenix Yen Yuan Wu Air. Show me some respect." Call your name in their dreams? That's true. I don't know how many single cultivators rely on you to relieve the pain of loneliness. Unfortunately, every time they miss you, they inevitably cause the death of hundreds of millions of people. Half of the sin is on your head. I think you've already committed a heinous crime, so you'd better find a place to redeem yourself. While the 2 were quarreling, the third person in the office finally couldn't bear it anymore. Be quiet, you 2. If you want to flirt, get out of here. Don't forget that there are people working here. The 2 people who quarreled immediately stopped and then looked at the third person in surprise. Little Hai actually rose up. Mutation, it's a real mutation. How could the always gentle and virtuous intellectual Hai Yun fan of 10,000 Arts sect become so irritable? In my opinion, it must be you, a dog official, who covets his handsome appearance and has done something improper to him. *T, I assign him all kinds of work every day so that he can get all-round experience. This kind of leader's love for his subordinates can be called as heavy as a mountain. Such a pure feeling, you actually slander me for coming out of the closet? Enough. Hai Yun fan slapped the table again. You 2. Didn't you say that you want to discuss the countermeasures carefully? There are only 3 days left before the grand competition, but our progress is still a lot behind. Have you come up with a solution or not? Upon hearing this, Wang Lu smiled. Isn't it obvious? Looking at the two of us, of course, we found a way. Hai Yunfan somewhat suspiciously said, found a way? What? Wang Lu said, just now when she reported to me about her work, I suddenly had a brainwave and came up with it. Wang Wu also said, I saw that he suddenly thought of it, and then he also thought of it. Hai Yunfan sighed. Have the two of you reached such a level of telepathy? Wang Wu said, what telepathy? I just looked at the written materials on his desk, determined the general scope, and then used my brain to think about it, and then I could come up with his idea. Hai Yunfan inwardly said, isn't this telepathy? So, what idea did you come up with? I remember that when we studied the plan for the grand competition, didn't you say that we couldn't find an opportunity to delay time? Wang Lu said, it's not that we couldn't find an opportunity, but we couldn't find an opportunity to delay enough time. Now we can barely do it. With that, he reached out and pointed at the plan book on the table, and then pressed his finger on one of the lines. Opening ceremony. Please pay attention to the WeChat public platform, search for Spirit Sword Mountain. By the way, I'm going to start to speed up my writing. I will add updates from time to time, please look forward to it. Chapter 622. Opening ceremony? Hai Yunfan curiously looked in the direction of Wang Lu's finger. In the proposal, the opening ceremony was indeed designed. After all, the grand competition was a major event related to the future of 9 regions. Its main purpose was to promote cooperation between the two sides. Peace and development were the main lines, and the principle of the grand competition was friendship first, competition second. If the contestants were beaten all over the face, it would not be in line with the theme. Therefore, before the official start of the competition, an opening ceremony was added, in which people from both sides performed some entertainment programs to create a peaceful atmosphere. As for whether the principle of friendship first competition second could be maintained after the start of the competition, it could only be left to fate. Therefore, on the whole, the opening ceremony could only be regarded as an appetizer, which was insignificant in the context of the grand competition. Even Wang Lu himself didn't put much effort into this segment. It was enough for him to find an idol group to show his thigh on the stage. However, today when Wang Wu came to report to Wang Lu on behalf of the beauty contest team, Wang Lu happened to turn to this page when he flipped through the proposal book. Suddenly he had a flash of inspiration and thought of a way. In short, there is no time limit for the opening ceremony. Hai Yunfan froze for a moment, and then retorted, do you want to delay the opening ceremony indefinitely? But the program list needs to be jointly approved by both sides before the start of the show. Yes, so a program list of 5,000 programs will definitely be rejected by them. We must create infinite possibilities in the limited program. Hai Yunfan frowned. Limited program, infinite possibilities? At this time Wang Lu was already full of inspiration. He immediately reached out and wrote a line on the table. Program, calligraphy performance, copying starting from 0. Hai Yunfan curiously said, I know calligraphy performance, but what is starting from 0? You'll know. Then Wang Lu wrote another line, program, group crosstalk New Year's greetings. I know that crosstalk is a form of entertainment that has gradually become popular in 9 regions in recent hundreds of years. For the Dixian people who have been sleeping for 16,000 years, it must be very new. But what's the mystery behind it? Wang Lu smiled. As I said, you'll know when the time comes. For now, forgive me for keeping it a secret. Seeing that Wang Lu was keeping him in suspense, Hai Yunfan shook his head and stopped asking. In any case, since he was so confident in his victory, there should be no need for others to worry. By the way, little Hai, only the 3 people in the room know about the opening ceremony. Don't mention it to anyone else. If you think you're not keeping it a secret, I can help you brainwash it. Hai Yunfan waved his hand. There's no need for that. You just promised me that you'd give me some time off after the tournament officially starts. Now that you've done this, I'm afraid there's no need for that. Wang Lu praised, little Hai, your thinking is becoming more and more meticulous. Then Wang Lu gave his master a look, indicating that they would discuss this topic in detail when they had time. Next, he would deal with the official business at hand step by step. By the way, have you finished counting those cross-dressing people that I mentioned before? Wang Wu said, of course I remember it clearly. How could I lose this kind of black material? More than a month ago, Wang Lu designed a group competition. The loser would have to cross-dress as a punishment. However, when it was actually implemented, due to various reasons, one of the important reasons was that the shocking performance of the King of 10,000 Beasts had brought a serious psychological shadow to everyone. There was no time to organize a large-scale tour for those cross-dressing people. Thus, the effect of the punishment was actually limited. Later on, many people thought that the so-called cross-dressing was just a verbal statement and could not be actually implemented. Thus, their fear of it was put down. In a sense, the progress of the last month's assault did not fully meet the requirements of Wang Lu. However, this certainly did not mean that Wang Lu really intended to let them go. Indeed, the resistance to the implementation of this policy was very, very big. Because according to his design, except for a very small number of geniuses, almost everyone would inevitably be defeated. Could it be that these thousands of elite talents in the 9 regions would have to cross-dress? In particular, it might involve supreme-level cultivators, which was even more difficult to implement. However, it was precisely because of the difficulty of implementation that it should be firmly implemented. If supreme-level cultivators could take the lead in cross-dressing, who else would dare to put up any resistance? Unfortunately, even with the ability of Wang Lu, he failed to persuade He Tu before. After all, there were also many elders in Shengjing sect who were on the cross-dressing list, and He Tu himself was also under a lot of pressure. However, at that time Wang Lu was fighting alone. Now, he had his master by his side, and her ability to act was quite vigorous. Wang Wu had clearly recorded down all the people who had lost in the previous classification competition, so that when she had the time later, she could look for them to settle the accounts in detail. There was a lot of room for arbitrage here. According to Wang Lu's rules, those who were defeated in the group competition had to cross-dress. If they were defeated in the senior group, the punishment would be tripled. Then how should the benchmark number be defined? How should the so-called tripling be implemented? At present, the more mature plan was to include the cross-dressing people in the negative incentive group of the cheerleaders. If they lost once, they would be scheduled to perform in the future. Not long ago, under the vigorous promotion of Wang Wu, this plan was finally acquiesced by Supreme He Tuesday. Then the problem was, performing in the same shameful cross-dressing state, performing in the martial arts competition that countless people paid attention to, and performing in an obscure event with only 2 or 3 spectators were 2 different concepts. And the ones who decided the performance list of the cheerleaders was, of course, Wang Wu and Wang Lu, the pair of master and disciple. In Wang Wu's view, the operating space here was all profit space. As long as those who were quick-witted gave Wang Wu a piece of their heart in time, then the task on the performance list could be a bit easier. And those who didn't know how to appreciate favors could only perform the wonderful cross-dressing in front of thousands of people. After the 2 discussed the details of the performance, they instructed Hai Yunfan to draft a notice, asking those who were on the cross-dressing list to accurately understand the spirit of the superior and pay the bribe in full and in time so as not to humiliate themselves. Of course, the words must be vague enough so as not to be caught. Hai Yunfan was tongue-tied for a long time, but in the end he was helpless. He buried his head and thought hard about how to write this article that was destined to be nailed to the pillar of historical shame. While Hai Yunfan was immersed in his work, Wang Wu thought of something and asked, "According to you, the big competition arena in the center of the City of Immortals can isolate the inside from the outside. Therefore you've been away for so long that Baizé couldn't find out. In such a venue, I'm afraid the effect of the cheerleaders can't be reflected." It doesn't matter. When the venue was designed, there was room for the cheerleaders. You can use this as a reason to ask them to open this function, so don't worry. But I remember, according to the work arrangement, before the official start of the competition, I have to trouble your beauty contest group to perform a public performance. How is the preparation going now? Wang Wu patted her chest and said, "Rest assured, the handsome men and beautiful women have been properly trained and used." Wang Lu asked suspiciously, "Used? How to use it? Have you used it before?" "Nonsense, if I don't personally inspect the goods, how can I feel at ease pushing them to the front of the stage?" "How many have you tested?" Wang Wu counted with her fingers and said, "The girls have basically been tested, and the men are all exempted. I asked Miao Yan to be in charge of it." "Your sense of responsibility is really touching." Wang Wu snorted and said, "Very well, I'll go and test the men's group. I guarantee that you'll have lush green on top of your head. What do you think?" While the 2 were talking, they heard an angry slap on the table next to them. "You 2 bitches flirt with each other, go out and do it. Think about how I feel when I haven't seen my Taoist companion for a long time because of my busy official business." Being accused by Hai Yunfan in such a righteous manner, the master and disciple of Non-Phase had to flee with laughter. When he walked out of the office, Wang Lu was slightly absent-minded and felt that his shoulder was light for no reason. At this time, it was only 2 days before the start of the grand competition. Most of the training events had stopped, waiting for the contestants to recover their spirit and officially appear on the stage. Therefore, there were not many things that needed him to deal with for a while. This made the chief planner, who had been busy for several months, feel quite uncomfortable. Let's just relax today. According to your idea, I'm afraid we're going to be busy again. Wang Wu patted her disciple on the shoulder and said with emotion. If the plan to delay the opening ceremony could be implemented smoothly, it meant that the people of 9 regions would have more time for training, and as the chief planner, he would naturally be busy. However, at least in these 2 days he could relax a little. Why don't you come with me to watch the rehearsal of the beauty contest group? We have all the beauties from all over the world here, and they are carefully trained. The previous 2 rehearsals have made many successful cultivators unable to restrain themselves. Wang Lu smiled. And then you catch them in a disgraceful state and then blackmail them for ransom? Wang Wu laughed and said, nonsense. Then let's take a look. Speaking of which, I've been so busy recently that I haven't had the time to pay attention to this beautiful team that has attracted the attention of all the cultivators in the world. It is said that Little Bai has been selected? Wang Wu said, you really don't care about my career. Not to mention Little Bai, even Lu Li and Yao Er can't run away. I've caught all of them to fill the team, forming a group of girls under Yuanying's stage. This is an opportunity to become famous in the world. How could I let outsiders take advantage of it? Upon hearing this, Wang Lu was surprised. You're not going to take the opportunity to inspect the goods, are you? Wang Wu asked in reply, when did you become so forgetful? If you want to inspect the goods, I've already inspected them. If I hadn't used the telepathic finger to inspect all the goods in the Ask the Heavens, do you think you could be as free and unfettered as you are now? You would have long been reduced to a vulgar family man like that Hai Yunfan. From inside the room came Hai Yunfan's roar, you 2 bitches, get away from me. Wang Wu laughed and flew away with Wang Lu on her sword. In midair she said, let's go see the results of my work. There's a surprise. Wang Lu said helplessly, alright, there's nothing else to do now anyway. Chapter 623. It's really an eye-opener. When walking out of the beautiful hall, Wang Lu felt that his steps were a little unsteady. With his current King Pill Peak cultivation base, there were very few scenes that could make him unable to maintain his balance. It could be seen how shocked he was in the beautiful hall. He thought that with the experience of 2 lives, he would have a very high resistance to these sensual things. As a result, of course, he had the resistance, but the temptation of the girl heavenly group, which had been carefully trained by Wang Wu and Miao Yen, was no small matter. Especially when he saw many familiar faces in unfamiliar clothes, smiling like flowers on the stage, that scene really made people's hearts beat faster. Wang Lu had never seen such a passionate Qianghua. She was wearing an apricot yellow shirt and underskirt, and her snow-white arms and legs were exposed. The immortal sword in her hand was in the shape of an immortal dew, and she danced on the stage. Although the sword was fast, it showed the gentleness of a young girl. Combined with the arrogance and indifference that inadvertently revealed on her face, there was a strange charm that could make people fall head over heels for her. Wang Lu had also never seen Zhu Shiyao, who looked like a daughter of a humble family. The young girl had changed her dress that was full of awe-inspiring sword intent, and wore a loose long dress that set off a bit of a scholarly air. A pair of exquisitely designed rimless glasses rested on the bridge of her nose. She sat upright in front of the desk and her brush moved like a dragon. Although every word she wrote looked like a sharp sword that had been unsheathed, compared to Zhu Shiyao's usual temperament, it still seemed a lot softer. The appearance, clothes, and even every move of the person on the stage had been carefully designed, and every frown and smile was full of beauty. But it was not a vulgar charm which made the audience pleasing to the eye but not lust. Of course that was what they said. But when the last performance began, the atmosphere in the hall suddenly changed. Even though the performance had been over for a long time, thinking back, Wang Lu was still in a trance and his footsteps were unsteady. Behind him, Wang Wu, who was dressed casually, covered her mouth and teased. Yo, young man, I see that your steps are weak and your center of gravity is shaky. Did you accidentally lose some of your bodily fluids in a moment of passion in the beautiful hall? Wang Lu turned around and scolded, you want to defame me while I'm going to the toilet? It doesn't matter if you went to the toilet. The key is what you did in the toilet. Wang Wu smiled as she walked up to Wang Lu and put her arm around his shoulder. How did it feel? The Girl Heavenly Group's swimsuit exhibition? Only insiders are allowed to watch this performance. Wang Lu also sighed with emotion. It's okay for others, but you actually made Qianghua and Zhu Shiyao change into swimsuits. You're amazing. Ah, what's so difficult about it? Yao Er is the most innocent. I told her that this is a mystical cultivation method and she believed me. As for Qianghua, I had a sword fight with her and after I won she agreed to cooperate with me. Wang Lu thought about it and felt that this guy really knew how to effectively grasp the weaknesses of human nature. Of course, on the other hand, the weaknesses of those girls were too obvious and easy to grasp. Anyway, you've seen the performance. Next, I have a few small things that I need your help with. Wang Lu's heart trembled. Did you think that the performance just now was a bribe to me? And then you expect me to use my authority as the chief planner to help you for personal gain? Wang Wu said, it's not a bribe, it's a threat. So, the reason why I wasn't allowed to appear in the audience during the entire performance was because you didn't tell them that I would be coming? Well, it makes sense. If they knew that there were men in the audience, they probably wouldn't have been so bold in their performance. I thought it was because you trained them well, but it turns out that it was a trap. So, if you don't want to be killed by those girls, you'd better cooperate? Wang Lu thought for a moment. If that's the case, all right, then the budget of your splendid hall will be halved. Especially the procurement projects, they will be submitted to me for approval before they can be implemented. Wang Wu's beautiful face turned pale. Are you trying to kill me together? That's right, I've never negotiated with terrorists. Either you stop or you die together. In any case, if the girls come looking for me, I'll just take responsibility for them. When the time comes, it'll be your head that's dyed green. Wang Wu touched her head and gritted her teeth. You're ruthless enough. After solving this episode, Wang Lu returned to his office in the sunset. Although it was only half a day's time, the leisure in the beautiful hall made him feel refreshed and refreshed. Only in this way could he better cope with the situation in the last 2 days. There were still 2 days before the grand competition, but the entire 9 regions had become tense. Wang Lu was in the valley behind Royal Soldier Sect, isolated from the rest of the world. However, the smell of gunpowder seemed to linger in his nose. The lava valley of Royal Soldier Sect was the training ground for many fighting groups. In the past few days, the atmosphere was particularly tense. Many cultivators were like prisoners on death row. They had finished their training early and sat cross-legged in the valley to meditate, as if they were facing death calmly, waiting for their punishment. Unfortunately, this time, everyone's expectation will probably fall short. Thinking of the victory and defeat in the City of Immortals a few days ago, Wang Lu felt that if those men of sacrifice who were unafraid of death really went on the stage, they would really die without a burial place as they wished. In just 3 months of preparation time, even if all the mechanisms were used, it would still be difficult to make up for the difference between 9 regions cultivators and Dixian cultivators. Therefore, all the means that could be used now must be used even if the side effects were great. Wang Lu sat down and then began to write the plan for the opening ceremony 2 days later. This time he didn't even need Hai Yunfan to write. Hai Yunfan was thinking hard about the plan for cross-dressing. And with only 2 days before the opening ceremony, Wang Lu could not afford to waste time. The plan was completed in one go. In just a cup of tea's time, the tens of thousands of words manuscript had been freshly produced. The speed of Taoist Master King Pill's hand was far better than that of ordinary people, not to mention that Wang Lu basically used a spell. After thinking about the wording in his mind, the paper was full of ink. After writing the manuscript, Wang Lu didn't have time to proofread it, nor did he intend to polish it. He directly sealed it in his pocket and then took the manuscript with him to Xingjing Sect through the transmission array of Royal Soldier Sect. His transmission array was specially authorized to go directly to the core of the sect. As soon as he left Royal Soldier Sect, he went directly to Hichu Doran's study room. There were only a few people in the entire 9 regions who had this honor. Wang Lu's amazing performance in this grand competition really made his status advance by leaps and bounds. In the study room, Hichu Daoran was facing a map of 9 regions in silence. Sensing that Wang Lu had come in, Hichu raised his head and a smile appeared on his face. What's the matter? To be able to make Supreme Hichu, who had always been serious and strict, show such kind countenance was a privilege that even Qianghua Fairy did not have. Therefore, many 9 regions cultivators were speculating about what kind of secret Wang Lu and Hichu had. Was it related to this matter that Hichu had been single for many years? Or perhaps Wang Lu's eyebrows seemed to be vaguely similar to Hichu's when he was young. In fact, the two of them certainly had no secret. Hichu was more friendly to Wang Lu than to Qianghua, not because he valued Wang Lu more than Qianghua. After all, Wang Lu was just an outsider. It was just because Wang Lu's temperament was somewhat amenable to coaxing but not coercion, while Qianghua preferred to do official business. Therefore, Hichu just treated Wang Lu in the most correct way. He was the leader of Xingjing Sect, the #1 sect in 9 regions. At the same time he was also the leader of the Wuxia League, which needed to look at 9 regions and seek the welfare of hundreds of millions of cultivators. In many people's view, the so-called Wuxia League was just a prop used by the high-rank sects to suppress 9 regions, and the leader of the Wuxia League only considered the interests of a very small number of people. However, he too had never thought of it that way. In his position he was very serious in everything he did. Therefore, when he thought that Qianghua could inherit his mantle and lead Xinjing sect to continue to be the leader of the immortal cultivation world in the future, he stood his ground and spared no effort to support her. He taught her the most brilliant method, gave her the almost supreme kill immortal sword, and mobilized all the resources of the sect to train her into an otherworldly fairy. This was the decision of the leader of Xinjing sect. Similarly, when he determined that Wang Lu could shine in this grand competition and play an irreplaceable role, he would also spare no effort to help him. He gave him all the conveniences within his authority. It was not that he liked Wang Lu, but because as the leader of the Wuxia League he thought that this was more beneficial to the Wuxia League. However, after reading Wang Lu's proposal, this supreme who had deep confidence in Wang Lu frowned slightly and remained silent. After a long time Hichu asked, 2 days? No, now it's only a day and a half. To meet the above conditions we have to make a big move. Wang Lu said, then let's make a big move. Isn't the establishment of this organizing committee to lead and integrate the resources of 9 regions so that we can make a big move when needed? For the grand competition, no matter how big the price is, we have to pay. He too thought for a while and then looked at the manuscript in his hand. The key to the problem is not us. Wang Lu said, yes, no matter how big of a battle we set up and how many programs we prepare, if the other party refuses to accept this long opening ceremony, it would be meaningless. But I have thought about this. It's just that some things are not convenient to put in words. Hichu repeated, not convenient to put in words? Then do you know what kind of pressure you have to bear? Wang Lu said with a smile, what kind of treatment have I enjoyed in the past few months? Rights and obligations always match each other. I still have this awareness. He too nodded with relief. Very well, then I approve it. Just do it. With that, the golden seal, which symbolized the supreme authority of the Wuxia League, was printed on Wang Lu's manuscript. A new week has begun, first update on Monday. Please follow me on WeChat, search for the previous Spirit Sword Mountain, and also ask for a few recommendation votes and monthly votes. Chapter 624. 2 days later, there was a sea of people outside the group of immortal tombs. The grand competition, which determined the future of 9 regions, finally officially kicked off. The cultivators of 9 regions gathered in Plentiful City. The people directly related to the grand competition had been stationed in the City of Immortals in batches a few days ago. Now, most of the people who came were enthusiastic onlookers. In addition to cultivators, there were more mortals in Plentiful City. After all, cultivators had high and low cultivation base. Those King Pil Yuanying stage cultivators could eat and sleep in the open. However, cultivators with low cultivation base had to rely on mortals to solve their basic necessities. Most of the permanent residents of Plentiful City outside the group of immortal tombs were now mortals. They came here from thousands of miles away to provide various services to cultivators and also enjoy the cultivators' feedback. As the grand competition approached, there were more and more floating people from all over 9 regions. There were already millions of mortals. On the day before the grand competition began, the place closest to the group of immortal tombs was crowded. Cultivators and mortals were mixed together. On the ground and in the air there were people everywhere. It didn't matter if you were a Taoist master of Jindan stage or a chef in the mortal world, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference in this sea of people. Naturally, there would be cultivators who complained about the Wuxia League's policy of equal treatment. In addition to those who were directly related and stationed in advance, the grand competition was open to all people in 9 regions, whether they were cultivators or mortals, righteous path or evil path, and even visitors from outside 9 regions were also welcome. As long as they entered the City of Immortal through the gate of the group of immortal tombs, they could freely watch all the competitions and even freely use the food and materials. Therefore, at this time, there were even many famine refugees who gathered in Plentiful City, which added a lot of chaos to Plentiful City. A cultivator who was blocked by the crowd a few miles away from the gate could not help but complain, "Damn, what is the organizing committee thinking? Treating cultivators equally is one thing, but how could they even let mortals in? What does this grand competition have to do with them? Do they want us, the immortal cultivators, to perform for the mortals? What a scandal." As he said that, he resisted the thick and suffocating smell around him, the sweat and breath of mortals, and the greasy smell of some people walking on the street while eating. When mixed together, even he, a Shudan stage cultivator, could not bear it. Beside him, his junior brother also complained, "I really don't understand what that fellow called Wang Lu is thinking. I heard that he made everyone suffer a lot during this period of time." Since Wang Lu became the chief planner, his endless stream of fantastic ideas really made the cultivators of 9 regions complain incessantly, especially the elite team of 2,000 people who were not included in the list of the competition. In order to gain the strength to rival Dixian in a short period of time, Wang Lu had really used all the methods he could use. The controversial cross-dressing was only one of them. Many more creative methods made countless people want to have sex with him. Apart from the remarkable results, he himself also had to bear a great deal of pressure from the public. Even those who were not qualified to participate in the training knew that there was a Taoist Master King Pil in the 9 regions who did things that did not follow common sense and caused the wrath of the heaven and the resentment of the people. Damn it, when this grand competition is over, I must find him to settle accounts. At least waste 10 years of his cultivation base. 10 years is too cheap. A lawless person like him must sit quietly in the death chamber for 100 years. As the two were discussing with indignation, suddenly a thick and powerful hand appeared on each of their shoulders. In an instant, the core energy in the jade mansion of the 2 Shudan stage cultivators condensed, and their tempered bodies trembled endlessly. The two wanted to look back but found that their heads had long been out of control. Then a buzzing sound came into their ears. "You two don't even deserve to lick Wang Lu's shoes, so don't talk nonsense here." "Sir, who exactly are you? Don't ask me who I am. You two don't deserve to know. I just want to tell you that you are lucky to meet me this time." Although Wang Lu is controversial, there are also many people who have received his kindness. If it were someone else, killing you 2 little Shudan stage cultivators would be a piece of cake. The rules of Plentiful City can't save your lives. As soon as the voice fell, the 2 Shudan stage cultivators felt that their shoulders were lightened. The sudden change made their center of gravity unstable, their legs weak, and their whole body's magical power could not be raised. Thus they plopped down on the ground. However, when they suddenly sat down in the crowd, their fate was self-evident. Soon a large number of footprints appeared on their bodies. The 2 of them were trampled into a sorry state. Although it was not very painful, their cultivator's dignity was naturally gone. They wanted to look up to see the person's figure and face, but they could only capture a majestic and burly figure from the shadows of countless pairs of soles. Why do I think that person is wearing a skirt? Probably because you've been trampled by a heroine in a skirt. By the way, I'm really about to be trampled to death. Come and help me. Ah, which son of AB** TCH deliberately stepped on my face? The little son of AB** TCH who deliberately stepped on the 2 people's faces, with a smirk on his face, slid through the sea of people while holding a silk bag in his hand. The boy's name was Shu Si, 14 years old, and he was a refugee in Plentiful City. A few years ago he came to Plentiful City with a group of traveling merchants. Later the traveling merchants left, but he stayed and did some short-term work in various shops in the suburbs of the city. Although Shu Si was not tall, his limbs were slender, and his pair of clever hands were the most flexible. Some merchants took pity on him because his parents died when he was young, so they gave him some errands from time to time. But soon people found that although this boy's hands were clever, he was skillful in stealing things. The place where he worked would always inexplicably lose something. It might not be very precious, but it always made the shop unlucky. Shu Si's hands and feet were nimble. He did not leave any evidence in Plentiful City for more than half a year, but no shop was willing to give him anything. Having lost his proper livelihood, Shu Si simply became a gangster and seriously engaged in the pickpocketing business. He became a disciple of a gangster boss in the suburbs. Relying on his cleverness, he lived a comfortable life. He always knew who he could touch and who he could not touch. In particular, he saw several of his companions who were blind enough to provoke immortal cultivators. Their limbs were broken on the spot, and even half of their 3 souls and 7 spirits were hooked away. He was even more cautious in doing things. He would rather have less harvest and be sprayed by the gangster boss than be refined into a demonic tool, which was worse than death. However, in the past 2 days the situation in Plentiful City changed. A large number of people came, and the orderly situation in the past was no longer there. Seeing the opportunity, Shu Si boldly made his move and gained some harvest. Especially on this day when the entrance of the group of immortal tombs was fully opened, the city was filled with people. Many monitoring arrays were overwhelmed and failed. In order to maintain the basic order, the city launched a sealing array, restricting the cultivators from using their cultivation base at will. Thus, these gangsters were even more unrestrained and lawless in the city. Just like the two shoot-on-stage cultivators just now, when it came to strength, they could casually stretch out a finger and crush 100 Wuxia to death. But now they could only be stuck in the crowd, and their mustard seed bag was stolen by an ant-like little thief. Wuxia, how's the harvest? At this time, Wuxia was hiding in a corner, weighing the mustard seed bag. Suddenly, he heard the voice of his companion. He turned around and saw that it was his scoundrel friend. The youth was delighted. He lifted the corner of his gown and saw more than 10 brocade pouches that were exquisitely tied inside. His companion sucked in a mouthful of cold air. How dare you? These are all cultivators' things, aren't you afraid that they'll track you down and hook your soul? Wuxia chuckled. Who would want to find a cultivator who could hook people's soul? I'm a fool. Don't look at those cultivators who are so high and mighty, in fact there are many idiots among them. Many of them have cultivated to the point that they became stupid, so they don't have any awareness of defense. You just hide and wait for them to make your move, you'll be fine. His companion was envious. I don't have your courage. But you can't open these cultivators' things, so what's the use of them? If I can't open them, someone else can. Have you forgotten that dead face in the west of the city? He only accepts cultivators' things. Moreover, once you give them to him, it has nothing to do with you and absolutely no one will look for you. But dead face went through the door. Wuxia was suddenly dumbfounded. He went through that big stone door? The so-called big stone door naturally referred to the entrance of the group of immortal tombs. This door was usually only open to cultivators with the permission of the excavation management. As for the mortals of Plentiful City, although they could see the towering magnificent door every day and night, they never had the chance to go in and see its true appearance. In the past few days, a lot of people have gone to that big stone door. In addition to Dead Face, there's also that old Taoist and green and peach blossom lady. Wuxia was even more dumbfounded. Why did all the people who are willing to harvest leave? However, the youth immediately rolled his eyes and made a decision. That's right, I'm going too. You're going too? His companion was stunned. What are you going to do? Boss said that no one is allowed to go in. Be careful not to cause trouble and implicate everyone. Wuxia spat out, that useless coward, listen to his fart. He even implicates everyone. When I found the spirit stones and exchanged them with Dead Face, how come he's not afraid of implicating everyone? I'm going. I heard that the big stone door is full of immortals. If there's an immortal who likes me, even if he doesn't accept me as a disciple, he can just give me 2 immortal elixirs, and I don't need to be a gangster anymore. In your dreams. Humph, didn't you hear a few days ago in the tea house, an expert said that if people don't have dreams, what's the difference between them and salted fish? Salted fish can be eaten, but can people eat it? Wuxia narrowed his eyes and didn't speak. The taste of human flesh was actually not that novel. After a while, he said with a smile, in any case, I'm going. If you follow me when the time comes, we can become immortals together. But even if you don't follow me later on, when I become an immortal, I will not forget your benefits. His companion knew that he had made up his mind, so he no longer tried to persuade him. Alas, I wish you good luck. Relying on his flexible skill, Wuxia forced his way through the crowded crowd and finally arrived at the entrance of the group of immortal tombs in the evening. This gate, which had been continuously expanded, was now several miles wide. Its top towered into the sky, like the mouth of a giant prehistoric beast, constantly devouring thousands of creatures. Wuxia swallowed his saliva in front of the gate and then mixed into the crowd to enter. Behind the gate was a brand new world. The second update has been sent. Thank you, Great Alliance leaders. Piao Hong reward. By the way, continue to ask for WeChat's attention. Search for Spirit Sword Mountain or His Majesty the King. Please help promote the WeChat platform, thank you. Chapter 625. Wuxia had never seen such a vast world. In Plentiful City, the teenager was used to seeing the means of cultivators. Once, he was fortunate to see a righteous cultivator slaying demons and devils on the outskirts of the city. A fire talisman scorched half of the sky. However, no matter which time, it was difficult to compare with what he saw at this moment. This is the real immortal means. The teenager swallowed hard and then rubbed his eyes hard. For a long time, he thought that the square built around the big stone gate in the center of Plentiful City was magnificent enough. It occupied more than 10 miles of area and could accommodate hundreds of thousands of people. The ground was clean and flawless, just like a bright mirror. However, compared with the situation in the Tomb of Immortals, it paled in comparison. The place where Wuxia stood was a white and flawless high platform. The high platform supported the entrance of the gate, and then the long steps went all the way down to a square that could not be seen at a glance. The square was extremely vast, like a new and independent world. The ground bricks were all made of fine jade. As far as the eye could see, there was not a single crack in the dozens of miles radius. This was a huge jade that could not exist in 9 regions. It was so huge and vast that the crowded crowd in plentiful city seemed sparse when scattered on the square. At the end of the square, there was also a daunting huge shadow that covered the sky. Shu Si swallowed a mouthful of saliva and guessed that it was the city of immortals that people flocked to like ducks. Dead Face, the old Taoist in green, and Peach Blossom Lady went there? While thinking about it, Shu Si walked down the steps quickly. He was flexible and his steps were light. However, after all, he was immortal. From time to time, he saw figures passing by him and overtaking him as fast as lightning. More of them directly flew up to the sky as fast as lightning. In the blink of an eye, they only left a shadow on the horizon. Shu Si was quite envious. He thought that it would be great if he could seek immortal fate here and learn to fly up and down like those people. Thinking of this, even his posture of going down the steps became a bit more serious, fantasizing that there would be a blind person who would suddenly take a fancy to him. Walking on the pure white square of holy glory, Shu Si was initially excited, but he quickly calmed down. After walking for an hour, from jogging to walking slowly, Shu Si felt that his legs were a bit sore, but the main point, the city of immortals, was still out of reach. Looking back, the huge stone door seemed to have moved a long way away. Looking around, those cultivators who were displaying their magical abilities couldn't arouse his excitement. In fact, there was nothing to be excited about. He had already seen many of them in plentiful city. After walking for another hour, about an hour, since there was no sky to see in this group of immortal tombs, Shu Si could only estimate the time. In short, when his stomach began to growl, he was still far from his destination. The young man was finally somewhat frustrated. After all, this group of immortal tombs was not a place for mortals. It was rumored that there were endless delicacies in the city of immortals as well as warm and bright bedrooms, but it would be extremely difficult for a mere mortal to even walk into the city. Shu Si stopped and looked around. When he saw that not far away in front of him, there was a group of hungry refugees who simply set up camp in the square. Even the smoke from the kitchen rose. Shu Si secretly admired the courage of these people. To set up a campsite in such a holy place, they were not afraid of being beheaded by a cultivator who couldn't stand it. However, on the other hand, the teenager was also very hungry. He carried more than 10 mustard seed bags of cultivators, but he didn't bring any dry food. He had treasures, but he had to starve. When Shu Si thought of this, an idea suddenly flashed through his mind. The next moment, he held up a mustard seed bag and then boldly shouted, "Is there anyone who would like to give me a ride? I would like to thank you with this thing." While shouting, Shu Si felt that he must have gone crazy. According to common sense, cultivators rarely responded to the call of mortals. However, this time, as soon as Shu Si's voice fell, he saw a huge shadow fall from the sky and shrouded him. Then a big black bird slowly flapped its wings and landed. On the back of the bird, a man with a full beard stared at the mustard seed bag in Shu Si's hand with his big bell-like eyes. "You want someone to give you a ride? In exchange for this mustard seed bag?" Being looked at by that man's powerful eyes, Shu Si shrunk his neck. "Yes, yes." The man on the bird nodded. "Come on up." Shu Si froze for a moment, then quickly grabbed the rough and stiff hair on the black bird's neck, dexterously climbed up, and then lay down behind the big man, firmly clinging to the bird's back. The big man looked back at him and laughed. "You're a clever boy. Your posture is correct, then sit tight." Shu Si inwardly said, "If you really like my cleverness, then take me as your disciple. Although your half-body animal skin and the black bird under your crotch can't be compared with those sword cultivators with white robes and flying swords, it's fate that we meet. I'm really not that picky." Unfortunately, the big man didn't say a word after that. He grabbed the black bird's mane, causing a strange cry, and then flew straight up to the sky. The strong wind pressure of the giant bird made Shu Si feel so uncomfortable that he almost couldn't breathe. However, when the speed stabilized, he boldly straightened up and looked around, which was too beautiful to behold. This was the first time Shu Si flew. Although he was a bit afraid of heights, it was more difficult to hide his excitement. This was his first immortal opportunity. The uncle riding the bird was really a good person. Not only did he not ask about the origin of his mustard seed bag, but he also kindly took him to fly. Although Shu Si also knew that this was a profitable business for the uncle, it was fate that the two of them met like this. Along the way, the giant bird flew as fast as lightning in the clouds. Before long, it had crossed the holy white square and landed in front of the City of Immortals. As for the City of Immortals, it was another kind of atmosphere. Shu Si looked at the people coming and going in front of the city gate, and his heart was already burning. However, he still remembered what he had to do. He took out the mustard seed bag from his lapel and respectfully handed it to the big man. "Immortal, this is for you." The big man glanced at him but didn't take the bag. He was silent for a long time, and then a slightly strange smile appeared on his face. "Immortal?" the teenager asked curiously. The big man finally couldn't help but laugh. "Immortal? I haven't heard anyone call me that for a long time. It seems that you're really just a mortal who doesn't know anything." Shu Si guessed inwardly, could it be that the man riding the bird actually had no status in the immortal cultivation world? In other words, he only appeared powerful in front of a mortal like him? However, it didn't matter. It should be known that before this, the upper limit of the teenager's ideal was that dead face who mingled with mortals. And dead face was not as powerful as this uncle riding the bird. Thinking of this, the teenager said, "Although I don't know anything, I know that Immortal has a kind heart. When I asked for help in the square, you were the first one to respond. This kind heart? Kind heart? Ah." The big man looked up and laughed. His voice shook Shu Si's heart. It was just that, strangely, the people around him didn't notice it. "Kid, you're the first one to say that I have a kind heart. Hee, the Black Wing King of Hell has actually become a benevolent immortal. If this gets out, I'm afraid all my brothers in the Blood Prison Cliff will laugh to death." Shu Si was dumbfounded. He incredulously looked at the big man in front of him who gradually changed his shape. He watched as horns grew out of his messy hair, fangs emerged from his lips, and in the blink of an eye, the forthright big man turned into a dark devil. Even though he had always been astute, he never expected that the immortal opportunity that he was looking forward to would actually bump into a devil. Moreover, it was a big devil who carried a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood, a devil who killed without blinking an eye. At this time, Shu Si remembered that the black boss in the suburbs had nagged at him. These days, Fengdu City is very chaotic. In addition to those cultivators, it is said that there are also a lot of evil cultivators who have come. When people are not paying attention, they will catch people and eat them. You must not go out and stir up trouble. At that time, he also laughed at the black boss for living more and more backward, but unexpectedly, "Kid, it is reasonable to say that in the territory of the Wanxian League, evil cultivators need to restrain themselves. But if I don't accept snacks that are delivered to my door, this father's thoughts are not clear." As he spoke, he raised one of his arms. His original 5 fingers had turned into sharp claws, and the nails were emitting a faint blue light. Obviously, they were highly toxic. Shu Si trembled all over, and he suppressed his fear and said, "Great Immortal, don't kill me. I have a lot of such bags here." With that, he pulled out all the mustard seed bags in his clothes and threw them in front of the big man. However, the big man didn't look at the bags and just said, "If I kill you, these things will belong to me. Moreover, this father doesn't care about the righteous cultivators' things. I just want to take your soul and refine it into a treasure. Great Immortal, spare my life. Great Immortal, spare my life." Shu Si knelt down on the back of the bird and loudly begged for mercy. In fact, he also hoped that many people nearby could hear him. Under the watchful eyes of the public, so many cultivators would not let a devil of the evil path do whatever he wanted, right? Wasn't it said that 9 regions was still the world of the righteous path's Wanxian League? Don't be delusional. When you get on my bird's back, it's like you're in my belly. You're covered by my breath so no one can see you. Moreover, even if they can see you, who would go against my blood prison cliff for a little bastard like you? This father is the official candidate for the grand competition, so every move is related to the future of 9 regions. For the sake of the entire 9 regions, I don't mind eating a few living people, ha. With that, the big man stretched out his claw to pierce the teenager's forehead and dig out his brain. However, at this time, a flash of pink lightning fell from the sky. The Black Wing King of Hell only had time to raise his head in great surprise before the lightning fell on his body. His burly body suddenly shook. Then his head separated from his neck. There was even no blood at the stump, but the huge body disappeared in a puff of smoke. The black bird under the big man uttered a mournful wail and then fell to the ground, not daring to move. Lying on the back of the black bird, Shu Si was still trembling. The change in front of him was so fast that it had completely exceeded his ability to understand. Why did the Black Wing King of Hell die? What was the pink lightning that fell from the sky? He couldn't think about it and didn't dare to think about it. He only hoped that what greeted him would not be hell. In his fear, he heard a young voice and the tone was full of displeasure. The IQ of this group of evil cultivators is really worrying. They openly commit murder in the security check at the city gate, and they think that no one can see it. This is definitely a kind of vulgarity in disguise, right? Or do they look down on my security check design? Moreover, at this juncture where the opening ceremony is about to begin, do you think my determination to maintain stability is a joke? Let alone a mere blood prison cliff, even if your superior department, the Blood Shadow School, dares to cause trouble, this father will still bring people to flatten it. As he spoke, a young man in a red and white robe descended from the sky. He stretched out his hand to summon a pink dagger and hung it on his waist. He then looked at Shu Si with a playful gaze as if trying to guess his identity. Are you, this guy's lover? Please pay attention to the WeChat public platform in the future. If there is a Dota 2 water friend match, the news will be posted on the platform. Search for His Majesty the King or the previous Spirit Sword Mountain. Thank you for your support. Chapter 626. This was a dimly lit secret room. After the Black Wing King of Hell was killed, Shu Si was brought here by the young man in red and white. He didn't even know where this secret room was built. When he came here he was grabbed by the shoulder by the other party, and then in a flash he inexplicably appeared here. The cultivator in red and white asked him to sit down, made him tea, brought him snacks, and then asked about the situation just now. It took Shu Si some time to explain his situation. Oh, you mean you don't know him and you just want to hitch a ride, but as a result you almost put your life on the line? So, you're really not his lover? Of course not. Shu Si was simply ashamed and indignant. He wished that he could slap the table and stand up to prove his innocence. However, when he thought of how this seemingly young cultivator in red and white robes had turned the incomparably awe-inspiring Black Wing King of Hell into ashes with just one sword strike, this slippery young man couldn't muster up any courage. Thus, the teenager had to euphemistically lament, if I'm really his lover, why would I need to worry about being eaten? You don't understand. These evil cultivators are the most abnormal. The so-called lover is actually a snack that they carry with them. And according to them, the one that has just been used is more delicious, probably similar to the feeling of cream sandwich bread. Shu Si said, although I don't understand what you're talking about, I always feel disgusted. The cultivator in red and white patted him on the shoulder with a chuckle and said, in any case, welcome to the city of immortals. Although you're just a mortal, there will be a place for you in this city. Believe me, this will be a feast that belongs to the cultivators and mortals of 9 regions. Shu Si nodded somewhat ignorantly. He didn't have much experience, so he couldn't hear the hidden message in the words of the cultivator in front of him. He just thought that the young man's tone was very big. He said welcome to the city of immortals, and also a feast for the grand competition just like the master of the city of immortals. It sounded very strange. However, the young cultivator in red and white was obviously very busy. After saying that, he got up and was ready to leave. Take your time playing here. I still have to patrol around to maintain stability, so I won't accompany you. Before leaving, the red and white cultivator gave him a small compass and said, recite the name and appearance of the person you're looking for, then follow the compass. The dead face you want to see is in area A17. Shu Si took the compass in a daze. Then he saw the red and white figures disappear in a flash. At the same time, a dazzling door opened on the side of the secret chamber. The teenager walked in with the compass in his hand. As soon as he stepped out, the light receded and he saw a bustling crowd in front of him. He was already in the city of immortals, but behind him was an empty space. Where was the shadow of the secret room? Shu Si pinched his thigh fiercely to convince himself that he wasn't daydreaming. There really was a young and handsome cultivator who saved his life from the hands of the Black Wing King of Hell and kindly gave him a treasure. Thinking of this, Shu Si hurriedly looked at the compass in his hand. This was undoubtedly an immortal tool, which was priceless in the mortal world. For a moment, the teenager couldn't make up his mind whether he should keep this compass forever or simply sell it to Deadface along with the more than 10 mustard seed bags in his clothes. However, thinking of the friendly smile of the red and white immortal just now, especially the tea and desserts that were personally brewed for him, Shu Si, who had always been greedy for cheap, could not persuade himself to hand over this small gift. This was an immortal opportunity that belonged to him alone. Money could be earned, but immortal opportunity could not be sought. Thinking of this, Shu Si saw the thin pointer on the compass, which was now leaning to one side. In that direction was a long and empty corridor. The corridor was more than 10 meters high, and at every certain distance, there was a sign hanging from the top, indicating the place ahead. A17? Shu Si frowned and barely recognized a few neat characters on it. Is Deadface there? While muttering, the teenager walked quickly along the direction of the compass. However, halfway there he was shocked. When did I tell anyone that I'm looking for dead face? Area A17 was an area with complex levels. The space of several miles was divided into 10 upper and lower floors. Each floor was neatly separated with hundreds of houses for the people who came to watch the battle. At this time, most of them were still empty and uninhabited. Shu Si boldly pushed open an empty door, and then saw that there was a key in his hand, and there was a sign of someone living outside the door. There were 2 rooms and 1 living room inside the door. The layout was compact but not crowded, and the decoration was simple but exquisite. However, what made Shu Si most stunned was that there were fragrant dishes on the dining table in the hall. There were chicken, duck, fish, and meat, and they were all steaming hot as if they were freshly cooked. Haha, it really is the means of an immortal. That idiot Mao Laosen should really come with me. Just for this meal it's not in vain, ha. Shu Si wolfed down his food until his belly was round. After he finished eating, the leftovers on the table disappeared automatically. The teenager stretched out and wanted to sleep in bed for a while, but when he saw that the compass on the table was still pointing straight outside, he remembered that he still had business to do. Following the guidance of the compass, the teenager stopped in front of the door of a room in the corner of the 7th floor. Dead face. Is it here? He reached out and knocked on the door, but before his finger could knock for the second time, the door opened from the inside, and an expressionless, livid face appeared in front of him. Shu Si immediately opened his mouth, revealing a row of neat white teeth. Dead face, I finally found you. The person in the room rolled his eyes and then said in a hoarse voice, Little mouse, how did you find me here? Shu Si smiled and said, It's a long story. You can't imagine what I've experienced along the way. With that said, he came directly through the door from the side of the dead face and sat down on the armchair in the hall. You feel a little more spacious here than I do. Dead face didn't stop him. He just silently closed the door, then turned around and asked, What are you doing here? Shu Si raised his eyebrows. What else can I do for you? Of course it's to do business. With that, he took out more than a dozen mustard seed bags. Dead face snorted, The harvest is quite a lot. Haha, don't you know what kind of person Grandpa Mouse is? Shu Si introduced the origin of these mustard seed bags with great joy, especially exaggeratedly showing off how he cleverly played with the high and mighty cultivators in the palm of his hand. However, after a while, seeing that the other party didn't respond at all, Shu Si wiped his mouth and said, Dead face, how much do you think these things are worth? 100 taels, a total of 13 bags, a total of 1,300 taels. For the vagrants in the suburbs, 1,300 taels of silver was an unimaginable wealth. Although the little mouse knew that the bags of these cultivators were definitely worth more than this, he still happily took the banknotes from Dead face. Silver and goods are settled, we'll see you later. With that, Shu Si took out the compass and began to find his way home. At this moment, the dead-faced man's expression suddenly changed. Where did you get this compass? Shu Si said, Of course it was given by someone. Oh. As Dead face spoke, he had already walked in front of Shu Si, and his 2 gray eyes shot out a light. Who gave it to you? Shu Si felt a slight chill in his heart and took 2 steps back. What are you going to do? I'm telling you, if you dare to conspire against me, the person who gave me the compass will definitely find you. Dead face froze for a moment and then slowed down his tone. What does that person look like? About in his early 20s, taller than you, wearing a red and white robe with a pink dagger on his waist. The more Dead face listened, the more surprised he became. Finally, he even widened his eyes. His facial muscles, which hadn't moved for many years, continued to twitch, but he suddenly didn't feel it. Red and white robe, pink dagger. Don't tell me the person you've seen looks like this? Dead face said, took out a picture book, opened one of the pages, and saw the young cultivator who just warmly received Shu Si was smiling brightly in the picture book. Shu Si's eyes lit up. Yes, it's him. Do you know him? Dead face sighed. How many cultivators in the city of immortals don't know him? It's just, why would such a big man waste his time on you? The young man didn't care so much. Haha, maybe it's because I'm handsome? At the same time, in the center of the city of immortals in Immortal 1 area, in a courtyard near the main arena, an old man walked around in a hurry that was completely inconsistent with his age, looking impatient and uneasy. When the courtyard door creaked open, he immediately turned his head and was unable to restrain his anger. Wang Lu, where did you go just now? The young cultivator in red and white robes smiled apologetically. Hello, second uncle, I'm sorry I'm late. I just wandered around the city on a whim to maintain stability. At this time you still have the mind to wander around? The second elder of Heavenly Sword Hall, Lucien, glared at him. Moreover, when did you need to come forward to maintain stability? Are the 36,000 golden armored soldiers in the City of Immortals not enough? Wang Lu shrugged and said, after all, man-made puppets have their shortcomings. They are inflexible and don't know how to adapt. There are a lot of things that they can't take into account. For example, just now at the city gate security checkpoint, I got rid of an evil for the 9 regions. Lucien suspiciously said, got rid of an evil? Yes, a birdman called Black Wing King of Hell did evil in public, so his 3 souls and 7 spirits were destroyed by my sword. Lucien froze for a moment, and then angrily said, isn't that the official contestant of this grand competition? Moreover, it's the main beast tamer of the beast taming competition. Wang Lu said, no wonder my sword strike only made me feel fat and juicy and rich in experience. It turned out to be an elite monster. Don't play dumb with me, what the hell is going on? Wang Lu then simply explained what happened at the city gate. At that time, there were no reliable passers-by around, so they didn't notice that he was going to commit cannibalism. Although the security check detected the abnormality, because he was an official contestant, it automatically exempted him. This was the rule that some evil cultivator elders insisted on joining. Today they finally saw the result. Lucien helplessly said, to let those evil cultivators join this grand competition and borrow their strength, it is necessary to compromise in some places. Wang Lu said, yes, so I didn't change the security check procedure, but they can't control me as a warm-hearted and chivalrous person, right? Moreover, the dignified King Pill King of Hell, who has been cultivating for more than 100 years, couldn't even catch a sword strike from a junior like me, so he deserved to die. Lucien was amused and laughed. Nowadays in 9 regions, there were not many people in the King Pill stage who could catch a sword strike from Wang Lu. Moreover, if that birdman doesn't die, those evil cultivators would be more rampant. They really think that we would be afraid to shoot at the rat for fear of breaking the vases in the grand competition. Today we can kill one as an example to others so that they would know how to be honest, so that I don't have to kill more people in the future when they cause big trouble. Lucien thought about it and found that it was indeed reasonable, so he asked, what about the child you saved? After a little investigation, I found that he was just an insignificant mortal hooligan, so I just gave him a novice suit and let him fend for himself in the city. However, I always felt that I was quite predestined with that boy, so I put a small spell on him. As Wang Lu said that, he remembered that he had asked the old man Feng Yin for divination not long ago. That old and dim-sighted sect leader was quite serious about the stars, and then told him that it was best to go out and do chivalrous deeds before the opening ceremony, and then there was the scene of the city gate maintaining stability. While he was thinking, the courtyard door opened again, and a tall and burly golden-armored man informed him in a stiff tone, it's time for the opening ceremony. Asking for recommendation votes, asking for attention on the WeChat public platform, search for His Majesty the King. The situation of the Water Friends match on the New Year's Day will be updated in real time on WeChat. Chapter 627. The arena in the center of the City of Immortals was already crowded with people. This large arena, which could accommodate the fight between true immortals, had been transformed into a huge stage. The space within a radius of thousands of miles was highly compressed and became an elastic stage with a diameter of less than 1 mile. The folded space around the stage was surrounded by seats that could accommodate millions of spectators, which were now almost full. Being in the folded space, when watching the performance, one could freely adjust their position and watch from various angles. Of course, the range of position adjustment would be different for different seats. Those who were invited as important guests usually had a higher level of seat, and the highest level of seat here was on the rostrum. It was also the place where the representatives of Dixian and 9 regions cultivators were seated. When Wang Lu arrived, on one side of the rostrum the Dixian team was already in place. On the 9 regions side, he too and the other supremes had already taken their seats. Many of them glared at the newcomer. Wang Lu, this kid, had the youngest seniority and the lowest cultivation base. Because of a momentary opportunity, he relied on his arrogance and was almost late for such an important occasion. How could people not be annoyed? Especially at today's opening ceremony, Wang Lu clearly shouldered a very important mission, which was the envy of many people, yet he didn't take it seriously. After Wang Lu took his seat on the Dixian side, the leader Xian Mo nodded slightly to He Tu and asked if they could start. He Tu nodded with a smile. Thus, the light in the arena suddenly bloomed, as if a scorching sun was ignited. Although the light was fleeting, it successfully attracted everyone's attention. When the crowd fixed their eyes on it, they saw that the arena was covered with trees and gurgling streams. And in the embrace of this green mountain and clear water, a piece of flat fragrant grass was the official stage of the opening ceremony. At the same time, in the City of Immortals, the signboards that were hung everywhere to guide the direction changed their content. The signboards showed the scene in the arena, so that those who didn't have time to enter the arena or couldn't find a seat could see the situation in the arena at any time and anywhere. Although it was not as detailed as the scene, at least they would not miss the main content. The pedestrians in the City of Immortals stopped and watched. Outside the City of Immortals, all the major immortal cultivation sects in 9 regions, as well as the capitals and imperial cities of the mortal world, there were all kinds of magical tools that were broadcasting everything that happened at this time. For a moment, the 9 states were silent. In the field, a gentle breeze blew across the green mountain, and the rustling sound rendered a tranquil and peaceful atmosphere. Then, amidst the clear wind, a young cultivator stepped on a flying sword and descended from the sky. His speed was very fast, and soon he fell from the clouds to the ground. The moment he landed, the signboards in the City of Immortals, which served as broadcasting boards, gave him a close-up. It was a young man in a red and white robe with a pink short sword at his waist. He was handsome and elegant like a deity. At this moment, countless people were so shocked that their eyeballs almost fell out of their sockets. Wang Lu. In Zone A17, a young man who was watching the opening ceremony from a public square almost had his jaw dislocated. It's him? Regardless of whether they knew Wang Lu or not, they were shocked by his appearance at this time. The first part of the opening ceremony of the grand competition was the leader's speech. Originally, Dixian and 9 regions should each send one person to speak, but Dixian politely declined, saying that he had no intention of participating in the opening performance. Obviously, for them, this was a farce that was meant to please the public, and the sooner it ended, the better. However, the 9 regions side attached great importance to this. Therefore, it was reasonable to say that Supreme He too should give a speech on the stage. He was the leader of the Wuxia League and the #1 Supreme in 9 regions who was the closest to Mahayana stage. No one was more suitable than him. And on this occasion, who else but he too could speak on behalf of 9 regions. However, at this moment, the person standing on the stage was Wang Lu, the young boy whose cultivation base was only King Pill. How could he do that? On the rostrum, the Supremes who had long known that there would be such a scene shook their heads and sighed. Then they glanced at he too, feeling particularly puzzled by the favoritism of the #1 person in 9 regions. No matter how optimistic they were about Wang Lu, he too's decision was far beyond the necessary level. At the same time, under the watchful eyes of the public, Wang Lu restrained his usual relaxed posture and his face became serious. Hello everyone, I am Wang Lu from the Wuxia League Lingzhen School. I am entrusted by Supreme He too to give the opening speech as the representative of 9 regions. With that he bowed deeply. When he looked up, his handsome face was full of sincerity. Standing here is not because I have high virtue and talent. 9 regions is a big place and there are many people who are better and stronger than me. When Supreme He too entrusted me to give a speech, I once felt that it was difficult for me to shoulder the heavy responsibility. However, Supreme told me that a series of things in the Tomb of Immortals happened because of me, so I should give everyone an explanation. On the other hand, as the chief planner of the grand competition, I do have some words to share with you about this grand competition. Therefore, in the end, I still have the cheek to stand here and look forward to everyone's listening. His sincere and humble speech gradually quelled the doubts of the people. Of course, there were also some people who were particularly familiar with Wang Lu. Because of this overly sincere speech, they felt that their gums were a bit sore. Brat, your acting is getting more and more realistic. On the stage, Wang Lu continued, why did this grand competition come about? Why did it happen? Everyone in 9 regions has long known it. I didn't want to elaborate. However, for a while, I found that people have misunderstandings about the grand competition. Some people say that the grand competition is a struggle for interest. It is us, the later generations of cultivators, and the predecessors of Dixian who are competing for the resources of 9 regions. Some people also say that the grand competition lacks the basis of cooperation, and it is difficult to have any actual effect. Some people even say that the grand competition is like a child's play, just a grand farce. Wang Lu took a deep breath and then said, in fact, during this period of preparation, we have publicized it more than once. Here I will say it again very seriously. The grand competition is not a struggle for interests. Whether it is for Dixian or for us, the later generations of cultivators, the real target of the fight is not each other, but those fallen immortals who have shaken the 9 regions countless times. Unfortunately, I can't make a living fallen immortal for everyone to see, and it is difficult to win people's trust with empty words. However, as the lead disciple of Spirit Sword Sect and the future sect leader of Spirit Sword Sect, I can tell you the story of my sect. 150 years ago, Lingjian school really experienced the fierceness of a fallen immortal. People knew that the black tide in the savage land of Blue River region was fierce, but that was only the residual poison of the fallen immortal in the past. In the battle against the fallen immortal, the team of elders who supported the prestige of the 5 uniques of Lingjian school was wiped out overnight. The golden generation suffered heavy casualties, and not even 1 out of 10 survived. It was also because of this record that Lingjian school still retained the title of one of the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League when it was at its weakest. The rest of the sects supported it, so it smoothly transitioned to today. However, thinking about the fierce battle 150 years ago, Lingjian school is still soul-stirring. After Wang Lu's words, an uproar could almost be heard from everywhere. Before that, Lingjian school had never explained the fierce battle 150 years ago to the world. The temptation of the inheritance of the fallen immortal after killing the fallen immortal was enough to make many people take risks. At that time, a few high-level elders of the Wanxian League who knew the truth fully respected the choice of Lingjian school and did not spread the news that they killed the fallen immortal. Now that the truth was revealed, it immediately caused a great shock. As a survivor, Lingjian school is very clear about the power of the fallen immortal. 150 years ago, it was only a vanguard scout who came to Blue River region, but it was enough to make one of the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League collapse. Moreover, there was no surrender, no compromise, and there was no possibility of coexistence between them. Only one side could be exterminated. This has been proved by Lingjian school at the price of blood. However, if there are 2, 3, or even 10 or 100 such opponents, what would happen to 9 regions? How much blood do we have to shed? With that, Wang Lu took a deep breath and said, "The group of immortal tombs was established 16,000 years ago. It was before the age of chaos, the era of immortal cultivation. Now, it seems that the legendary Dixian people emerged one after another. However, under the suppression of the fallen immortal, they were forced to go underground from the ground and sleep in the ancient tomb for thousands of years. This is our opponent. They are immortals from the upper realm, with incredible and unmatched magical abilities. They are to us what we are to mortals. In the face of such an enemy, we actually have no more choice. Joining forces is the only choice. It is impossible for any of us to defeat the fallen immortals. Even if the 2 of us join forces, we are not sure to win. However, at this time, going our own way will only make the remaining odds of winning even less. Only joining forces is the only way to survive. And this grand competition is precisely for this purpose." When it came to this, Wang Lu paused for a while and then said with a smile, "Many people have asked me, since we want to cooperate and join forces, why should we design a tit-for-tat stage and increase the anger between the 2 sides? The reason is very simple, because we and the seniors of Dixian are separated by 16,000 years. This period of time is so long that it is difficult for the 2 sides to understand and trust each other. And trust is never based on empty words. There is an old saying in 9 regions that goes, if you don't fight, you won't get to know each other. There are also people who say that men communicate with each other with their fists. Therefore, I want to design such a grand competition so that both sides can show themselves to their heart's content on the field. Strength, wisdom, character, and even everything else will be shown. During this period, there will be frictions, contradictions, and even conflicts. But at least we will know each other and understand each other. When faced with a common threat, we can finally put aside our grudges and join hands." When Wang Lu finished speaking, many people fell into silence. Previously, when the Wanxian League mobilized for the grand competition, it had stirred up the blood of the cultivators, and the hostility against the Dixian was very strong. However, after listening to Wang Lu's speech today, people could not help but gradually change their view. Some of the cultivators who had previously questioned the qualification of Wang Lu also secretly felt somewhat convinced. Just standing on that stage and speaking freely in front of countless pairs of eyes was a rare skill. Not to mention that his speech was logical, well-organized, and sincere, which was really impeccable. Even many people in Dixian secretly nodded their heads, deeply agreeing with Wang Lu's words. In the face of the threat of the fallen immortal, cooperation was inevitable. However, on the basis of lack of understanding and recognition, the so-called cooperation was nothing more than empty talk. Therefore, instead of wasting 10 or even 100 years of time, the 2 sides cautiously probing each other, it was better to do everything on a grand stage. Finally, Wang Lu said with a smile, "There is a saying in 9 regions that goes, peaceful measures before force." Before the two sides pick up their weapons, we have specially arranged a cultural performance, which is also the theme of today's opening ceremony. Because the so-called art is the sublimation and interpretation of life, and the exchange of art is an effective way to strengthen mutual understanding. Therefore, please be patient and seriously enjoy the performance brought by the 9 regions team. With that, Wang Lu bowed deeply to the audience and was ready to turn around and leave. It was just that, when he leaned down, he could not hide the chuckle on the corner of his mouth. You have to be patient, okay? Please pay attention to the WeChat public platform. Although only one message can be sent a day, the important information will be released first. Just search for His Majesty the King. You can also pay attention to Sina Weibo, where you can play more. Chapter 628. After Wang Lu's speech aroused people's enthusiasm, the more enthusiastic artistic performance officially began. In this regard, not only the Dixian team was full of curiosity, but even many of the elders of the Wanxian League also leaned forward. The opening ceremony of the grand competition was not the focus of the whole process, and it was only mentioned in 2 or 3 strokes in the proposal book. Thus, people did not pay much attention to it. Previously, it was basically handled by Wang Lu alone, and Wang Lu only reported the situation to Supreme He Tuesday. The other elders did not pay much attention to it, thinking that it was just a dispensable red tape. It was not until this time that they remembered that Wang Lu was good at unconventional swordplay, performing the unusual in the ordinary. This opening ceremony seemed ordinary, but since it was directed by Wang Lu, there must be a hidden surprise. It was just that. What would that surprise be? Not long after, the show officially began. The first to appear was an elegant woman. She walked in from the folded space and stood straight in the center of the stage. Her posture was slightly cramped, her cheeks were slightly red, and she seemed a little nervous. If a person knew that his every move was being watched by millions of people, it was inevitable that he would be nervous. Like Wang Lu, who faced countless eyes and spoke with ease and assurance, it was really a kind of talent that could not be forced. At the same time, the audience was also carefully examining the woman on the stage. They saw that she was dressed in a simple dress, had delicate features and tightly pursed lips, which still showed a bit of immaturity. After the woman's magical power was married, her stage was about Yuanying's stage. However, in today's City of Immortals, it was actually insignificant. That beautiful and delicate face was completely unknown to anyone. So, why did Wang Lu arrange such a rookie as the first candidate to appear? However, when the woman finally opened her cherry lips in the long silence and made a sound, people no longer had any doubts. It was hard to describe with words. It was truly the sound of nature. With just one syllable, the long and clear singing attracted all the birds around the stage. Among the green hills and blue waters, hundreds of birds flew together. A group of colorful auspicious clouds landed on the empty grassland. It was like a cluster of flowers, surrounding the woman in the center like the moon surrounded by stars. The moment the woman opened her mouth, she cast aside her shyness and immersed herself in her own world. Melodious syllables rang out one after another, flowing smoothly and without the slightest hint of nervousness. Her singing deepened as the song progressed, permeating the world. At first it was birds and beasts. Gradually, it extended to flying flowers, falling leaves, and even rocks and rivers. Using her singing to resonate with heaven and earth, the woman demonstrated a mysterious and wonderful realm to the world. Who is this woman? After listening for a while, a perfected cultivator on the rostrum couldn't help but ask. I've never seen it before. Even the true disciples of the exquisite sound sect are far inferior to this kind of talent. That voice can simply penetrate one's heart. Another true monarch sighed with emotion. That's right. I've only heard of some ancient clans possessing such a voice. I didn't expect that the bloodline of those clans had been passed down to this day, but what is she singing? Although I can feel the emotional resonance in the song, which seems to be describing the feelings of nature, I've never heard of the language of the lyrics. Taoist brother Qianluan, you're the most knowledgeable, what do you think? In the front row of the rostrum, the sect leader of the 10,000 Arts sect smiled. This is an ancient language. It was an ancient language that was only used before the end of the Age of Chaos. It was usually used to show respect to those above it. It was a very complicated grammar, and could be said to be the most elaborate language. It has long been lost. A few years ago, I found many ancient books in an ancient ruin, and finally managed to decipher this language. From my point of view, although her singing is smooth, the ancient language is actually a bit jerky. However, with the complexity of that language, it's not easy to be able to do this. It's enough to show our friendship and sincerity. On the other side of the rostrum, the reaction of the Dixian people was quite different. Many of them had lost their initial calmness. They stood up from the praying mat and somewhat incredulously looked at the girl on the stage. How could she use this language? Moreover, this song is so clear, not like the voice of the mortal world. This qualification, even in our time, is hard to find. Unexpectedly, as the leader, Xian Mo nodded and sighed. The Wanxian League has indeed shown their etiquette and sincerity. The Dixian people, who were intoxicated by the song, nodded in agreement. This song aroused their great affection, and their gaze toward the Wanxian League cultivators on the other side softened a lot. Only Bai Zhe still disagreed. He vigorously shook his head but didn't refute it. Instead, he just looked like he was watching a good show. Before long, the woman on the stage finished singing, and the lingering sound reverberated in the air for a long time. The woman took a long breath, opened her eyes and turned back into the easily nervous little girl. After gawking for a moment, she hurriedly ran off the stage. At this time, the birds that landed on the grass were still intoxicated by the lingering sound of the song and refused to take off. After a long silence, there was a thunderous applause outside the stage. Whether it was the cultivators of the Wanxian League or the Dixian people, they were all amazed by the sound of nature. And Wang Lu, who had been waiting backstage for a long time, patted the shoulder of the woman who had just come down from the stage. Well done, Bayan. You are indeed the descendant of the demon wolf. After transforming, you have awakened the talent of the sound of nature. Your song can reach people's hearts and shake the world. From today onwards, you will be given the name Xiao Tian. TSK, who cares? The woman named Bayan and shook her head, then curled up and returned from her human form to the appearance of a gray stupid dog. She curled up in the corner of the backstage and laid down, and even let out a long yawn. Don't forget what you promised me before. When I wake up, you will give me the best meat to eat and Xiaobai will also go on a date with me. After saying that, the stupid dog closed her eyes, and the sound of her snoring gradually rose. Wang Lu sighed. It could be said that the affairs of the world were hard to predict. Who would have thought that the stupid model dog that was picked up from the savage land was actually a girl with a heavenly singing voice? Since he brought her to the Spirit Sword Mountain, she spent most of her time eating and sleeping. The seventh elder said that this kind of spirit beast was still in the growth period, so it was natural for her to sleep for a long time. He also said that once she finished this growth period, she would have a jaw-dropping leap. As a result, the seventh elder was right. Bayan's leap was really jaw-dropping. Before this, who would have thought that she was actually a female dog? When he was with Bai Shixian, she often entangled behind Xiao Bai, which disturbed the quiet girl. Therefore, Wang Lu even considered giving her an artificial sterilization. It was just that, at that time he was distracted by external affairs so he didn't carry it out. If he had observed carefully at that time, he should have noticed that there was a little elf missing from the right side of her left leg. A girl really changed 18 times between childhood and womanhood. At first, she was just a stupid dog with an amazing appetite, but she couldn't even speak fluently. However, after a long hibernation she suddenly learned to transform. Her cultivation base skyrocketed, and she resolutely turned into a beautiful girl. And she even had the heavenly voice. Now that he thought about it, at that time the stupid dog rarely spoke, and even when she spoke she would stumble. Wasn't this a manifestation of the divine thing's concealment? Of course, in addition to that, Bai was still the same Bai. Her mind was simple and her mind was simple. Then she harbored evil intentions toward Xiao Bai, and then, her appetite was huge. However, for Wang Lu, it didn't matter whether Bai was male or female, stupid or smart. Even the bloodline of the demonic wolf was not important. No matter how good her talent was, it would take decades or even hundreds of years to really show its effect. Wang Lu couldn't wait that long for her. But now, there were too many places that could be used for her beautiful voice. Looking at the mottled dog in the corner, Wang Lu slightly narrowed his eyes and began to make a deeper calculation. Phew, the lingering sound lingers for 3 days. The words of the ancients can be felt by me. On the rostrum, a young Dixian who looked to be in his early 20s shook his head and then sighed. I feel that my entire jade mansion has been sublimated. Hearing this, Xian Mo laughed. You're exaggerating. Although that child's voice is beautiful, it's not like you haven't heard Luo Shui sing. How can Luo Shui be the same? There are 2 kinds of songs in this world, Luo Shui's and not Luo Shui's. Comparing Luo Shui with other people is too much of a bully. Therefore, when I praise other people's singing, I never consider Luo Shui. Xian Mo said, Oh, comparing Luo Shui with other people is indeed too much of a bully. But if I'm not mistaken, that child just now is the main force of the Wanxian League singing group. The young Dixian shook his head. That's just asking to be humiliated. I just hope that child won't be hit too hard after the competition and leave behind a shadow. I really like her singing. The next program is about to start. It seems to be a dance. It looks unique. It's probably the innovation of these later generations in the past 10,000 years. I hope it can be at the same level as just now. Let's wait and see. After Little Demon Wolf's song, it was Taoist Master Miao Yan's turn to appear on the stage. It was a singing and dancing team composed of 12 stunning women. The content of this team's performance was exactly the same as the dance performed by the cheerleading girls when Taoist Master Wu Su fought against Three Rivers Scholar. However, many details had been optimized. At the same time, the composition of the girl group had also changed, and the overall quality was far superior. It was just that, compared to Quan Zhouhua's singing, the evaluation of the second program was much flatter. The response from the Dixian people was not particularly strong. The strong response came from the audience of 9 regions, especially those with slightly weaker cultivation base. Halfway through, they were dazzled by the girls' snow-white thighs, and their nosebleeds gushed out like a fountain. However, the effect of this provocative dance on the Dixian people was much worse. Except for a few people who danced with joy, the others looked very calm. Alas, they even brought this kind of program. Aren't they running out of tricks too fast? Do they expect us, the Earth True Immortals, to lose our guard because of this level of provocation? What a joke. Hey Jialan, wipe your nosebleed, it's too shameful. Why do you care? The immortal path that I uphold is the path of sensual pleasures, so having a nosebleed is a matter of course. Moreover, my blood is very vigorous, so a little blood is nothing. As the leader, Xian Mo ignored the quarrel behind her. She slightly frowned and said to herself, is there any profound meaning in this program? Wang Lu should not make useless arrangements. I always feel that this opening ceremony is not so simple, and there's a big conspiracy hidden in it. In Xian Mo's suspicion, one program after another appeared on the stage. Some were ingenious and eye-catching, while some were mediocre and not surprising. But in short, there was no more shock brought by the heavenly sound. And the patience of the audience finally began to wear away in the sound of singing and dancing. The program was indeed wonderful, but compared with the grand competition, these appetizers would inevitably become boring after eating too many of them. It seems that this opening ceremony is almost like this. My previous hunch is mostly wrong. Xian Mo said to his partner behind him, let Black get ready. However, at this time, the mediocre dance on the stage ended. The performers stepped down and Wang Lu, as the host, came to the stage. Next, please enjoy the calligraphy performance, starting from 0. Wang Lu's appearance on the stage attracted a lot of people's attention. There were so many programs before, but they didn't see him on the stage. Was there a mystery in this calligraphy performance? However, what was there to see in a calligraphy performance? However, the next moment, many people's eyes widened and their mouths opened wide. Because after the announcement, Wang Lu personally rolled up his sleeves, dipped the writing brush into the ink, and then spread the Xian paper on a flat table. Then he began to write eloquently. It turns out that you wrote it yourself. Please pay attention to the WeChat public platform and search for His Majesty the King. In theory, there should be 2 updates today. Please wait and see. Chapter 629. Wang Lu had always believed that a leader who had to do everything himself was pathetic, because it meant that he had no one to use. And what was the difference between a leader who had no one to use and a waste? At least, in terms of leadership, they were useless. And now, Wang Lu was personally experiencing the tragedy of having to do everything himself. From the time he picked up the brush until now, he had already written tens of thousands of words in front of the table. Although his king pill-level body would not feel any pain in his wrist or discomfort in his lumbar spine, when he was writing, Wang Lu could feel a strong pressure, which made it difficult for him to breathe and made him sweat profusely. This martial arts arena could be one-way isolated from the inside and outside. The audience outside could see inside, but the people inside could not see outside. Of course, this needed to be adjusted later. Therefore, in theory, Wang Lu should not feel any pressure. But now, he could clearly feel that many people were glaring at him with murderous gazes. Of course, this was not surprising. A good calligraphy performance had been turned into a copy of a super-long novel of nearly 20 million words. Anyone with a normal IQ would be able to see through his tricks, and it was natural for him to be angry. Similarly, because of the particularity of this task, It was difficult for Wang Lu to find a reliable calligraphy master to carry it out, so he had to do it himself. Among the cultivators, those who cultivated the way of calligraphy were quite devout. When they heard that they had to copy a book under the watchful eyes of the public, moreover, it was a super long novel, many of them turned hostile on the spot. Some of them had a calm mind and frankly admitted that they had never learned to write 20 million words in one go. As for the mortals, there were some calligraphers who were easy to buy. A bottle of immortal ink and a few immortal pills were enough to make them let go of their scholarly reservations. The problem was, even if these mortals had strong writing skills, it was impossible for them to write 20 million words in one go. Even if their wrist was broken, they would not be able to do it. Not to mention that even if they wrote wildly, they could only write thousands of words in 2 hours, which would take thousands of hours without sleep or rest for hundreds of days. Therefore, in the end, Wang Lu could only do it himself. As the top student of Spirit Sword sect, his calligraphy was passable. At the peak of the King Pill level, his physical body was strong and his endurance was extraordinary. Let alone not sleeping for hundreds of days, even for several years, it would not be a big deal. What was even rarer was that he didn't have any restraint or moral integrity. He was copying popular novels with a straight face. He didn't feel any psychological pressure at all. The only source of pressure was the furious Dixian outside the arena. Does that kid think we're idiots? Under the watchful eyes of the public, is this the sincerity of the Wanxian League cultivators? The anger of the Dixian could not penetrate the isolation of the arena to directly overwhelm Wang Lu, so they had to shift their target to Supreme Hichu, who was close to them. Facing the Dixian's rage, Hichu Daoren only chuckled without saying a word. Firstly, he wasn't good at arguing and he didn't have the ability to convince these Dixian to calm down with his eloquent words. Secondly, Wang Lu had already reported this matter to him and made sufficient plans. There would naturally be someone to deal with this situation. That's not right. Sure enough, without the need for Hichu to worry, someone came out from behind and stood in front of the Dixian. That person was dressed in snow-white clothes. Her black hair was tied behind her head like a waterfall. There was a bamboo sword and a wine gourd on her waist. She looked like a wandering immortal. She was the #1 expert in 9 regions, King Pill. Wang Wu answered the question of the Dixian on behalf of He-Tu and said, "The Wanxian League is indeed very sincere, please don't misunderstand." The most angry Dixian could not help but stand up and pointed at Wang Lu, who was still copying in the arena, and said, "Sincere? How can this damn calligraphy copy be called sincere? I've never heard of any famous calligraphy work called starting from zero." Wang Wu lightly said, "Of course, this is a calligraphy work that was born during your deep sleep, so it's normal that you haven't heard of it. Then you have the ability to take out the original and let us have a look. Copying must have the original to be called copying, right? I've already remembered it in his heart. The way of calligraphy lies in one's heart. Moreover, before the age of chaos, all of you were the top powerhouses in the continent, so what new things haven't you seen in the world? If we copy the calligraphy work of your time, it's like showing off our slight skill in front of an expert, which is a sign of lack of sincerity. You're clearly pestering us endlessly. How could there be such a long calligraphy piece in the world? Moreover, I think this momentum is endless. You guys just want to take this opportunity to delay the time." Wang Wu continued to be stubborn. That's why art keeps pace with the times and constantly innovates. There's no such thing in your time, but it doesn't mean there won't be in the future. As for delaying the time, that's just your unilateral malicious speculation. In fact, in my eyes, what I see is one of the best genius cultivators in the Wanxian League showing you the art of calligraphy in an incomparably humble manner. From the beginning to the end, we have never crossed the line. Ridiculous, this is ridiculous. The furious Dixian couldn't help but want to take out his immortal treasure, but before he could do so, he was stopped by Xianemo. "Don't be impulsive. If we start the war now, we'll be in the wrong." "Xianemo, you still want to speak for them at this time?" Dixian was furious. "You want to reason with them, but they are pestering you endlessly. What's there to say to such people?" Xianemo said, "Pay attention to the last sentence she just said. From the beginning to the end, they have never crossed the line." She's right. Although this absurd calligraphy performance is just to delay the time, from the perspective of the rules, they can't be blamed. Hearing this, Dixian froze. "What rules?" "It's the proposal that they submitted at the beginning, the one that we all reviewed and approved. I just carefully looked through it, and there's no time limit for the opening ceremony." "You mean it's reasonable for them to delay the time here?" Xianemo shook his head. "Of course not. They are taking advantage of the loophole in the rules, but after all, we have also agreed to this loophole. What a joke. So what if we agreed? At that time, who would have thought that they would use the rules to do such a despicable thing? I don't agree with this kind of loophole rule at all. Before he finished speaking, he heard Wang Wu sneer. Well said. You deny it when it's not good for you. We can clearly see the sincerity of your diction. It's obvious that you are despicable first. Seeing that a new round of quarrel was about to break out, Xian Mo frowned, but she was somewhat helpless. Her prestige as the team leader was actually very limited. It was just that among the group of diction, they couldn't choose a more convincing leader for the time being, so they pushed her to be the team leader. Once a situation like this happened, she really couldn't control the situation. Bai Zai's prestige was higher than hers. Although he was very unpopular and his character was even more disgusting, he was deeply appreciated by the boss and did a lot of things for him. But at this time, it was already good enough that he didn't take pleasure in their misfortune. She really couldn't count on him. The only person she could count on was him, who always regarded himself as a sinner and didn't want to show his face in public. At this moment, Xian Mo suddenly felt that there was one more person behind him, and a low voice sounded in his ears. It was the warm voice that made Xian Mo instantly feel relieved. Enough, stop arguing. The rostrum instantly quieted down. The Earth Immortal, whose face was flushed with anger just now, took 2 steps back, and the resentment in his heart vanished like smoke in thin air. Those Earth Immortals who were watching enthusiastically also retreated. The black-clothed Dixian walked over from the void and said softly, "Let's just go on like this. After all, the rules have been recognized by both sides. Even if there is a trap hidden in it, if we can't recognize it at the time, we can only blame it on our carelessness at that time." Hearing the black-clothed man's words, Xian Mo was very relieved. His prestige was second only to that of the former leader who led the group of Dixian to build the group of immortal tombs. His words really carried enormous weight. "Since you said so, I agree." The Dixian, who was still angry just now, also shook his head with a wry smile. "It's just that I never knew that you, Black, are such a pedantic and persistent person." Pedantic? The black-clothed Dixian paused for a moment. "You're wrong, this is not pedantic. What the young man said just now is right. We are too different from this union of 10,000 immortals. We even lack the basic understanding of each other. In this case, it is necessary to work together whether we agree or not. We must stick to the rules. Even if that's just a trick they use to delay time?" The black-clothed man asked, "Isn't it also a test of our sincerity? If they can't tolerate such a problem and even want to tear off all pretense of cordiality, do you think they will feel at ease to cooperate with us?" "I understand." Being questioned, Dixian was full of shame. "I think the problem is too simple." The black-clothed man nodded. "So this time we will swallow this loss first. But on the other hand," he said, and then turned to look at Wang Wu, "our patience is not endless. We can tolerate you to take some advantages within the scope of the rules, but don't forget the basic purpose of our cooperation, which is to avoid internal friction and waste. If too much time is wasted on this boring trap, then there is no need to continue the cooperation." "Oh." Wang Wu shrugged and nodded with a chuckle. Thus the storm was resolved. The several Earth Immortals looked at each other in dismay, and then sat back in their seats. Some closed their eyes to rest, while others looked at Wang Lu's transcription with interest. No one mentioned the dispute just now. The prestige of the man in black was so high that even the union of 10,000 immortals was dumbfounded. At the same time, they were glad that this person regarded himself as a sinner and refused to come to the front of the stage, causing Dixian to be leaderless. Otherwise, Wang Lu's plan would not have succeeded from the beginning. After the black-clothed man dealt with the dispute, he stepped into the void again, like a dragon whose tail was nowhere to be seen. After the black-clothed man left, Wang Wu withdrew and found a remote empty seat to sit down. After sitting down, the woman looked at her slightly trembling right hand. After a long silence, she let out an undetectable chuckle. As expected of the top figure in Dixian, "I haven't experienced the feeling of being suppressed by someone's aura for a long time. Consider it as a celebration for this book being banned on Qidian. I won't post a comment. Just post an advertisement on the WeChat public platform. Everyone is welcome to follow the WeChat public platform. Just search for His Majesty the King." Chapter 630. 3 days later. In front of the desk, Wang Lu was still writing. Although he had not closed his eyes for 3 days and 3 nights, he looked energetic, without the slightest sign of fatigue. His right wrist even became more firm and powerful. Wang Lu's calligraphy copying performance had lasted for 3 days. From scratch, he had copied hundreds of thousands of characters at an amazing speed. The manuscript paper was stacked like a mountain, and it was still increasing at an amazing speed. The momentum seemed endless. In these 3 days, most of the audience had given up watching. With Wang Lu's attitude of stalling for time, people soon realized that there would probably be no more serious program later on, so there was no need to waste time here. At the same time, the Wuxia League operated efficiently and quickly organized the contestants to return to the training ground for the assault training. The news from Wang Wu was that Wang Lu planned to delay the opening ceremony for at least a year or two, so that the contestants could make their last stand. Although it was hard to imagine how he could accomplish this feat, at present they could only work according to this plan. Previously, after 2 months of assault training, many people had broken through the bottleneck and their strength had advanced by leaps and bounds. If they could consolidate the results for another 1 or 2 years, then after the start of the competition, they might be able to complete the miracle of defeating Dixian. Of course, this was also a must-win situation. Wang Lu had tried his best to create too many favorable conditions for the union of 10,000 immortals, organizing the grand competition to decide the winner and loser. The competition was also divided into 2 kinds, civil and military. Then he had won a lot of training time for the participants. If the union of 10,000 immortals could not win this competition, it would be too sorry for Wang Lu's hard work. On the other hand, those who entered the City of Immortals with expectations also took this opportunity to get to know the city better. The battlefield of the City of Immortals was hundreds of miles in radius, and there were many folded spaces inside, so the real space was difficult to estimate. Such a huge city was divided into 5 areas and hundreds of communities. At present, Area A was open to everyone, which was the general residential area. This area could accommodate up to 10 million people and provide them with basic living necessities. Most people in the mortal world would settle down here and then try to find their own immortal fate. There were countless cultivators gathered in the City of Immortals, so the so-called immortal fate was naturally not small. Every day, many mortals were chosen by cultivators and crossed the barrier between immortal and mortal. There were also many disciples of small sects or rogue cultivators who encountered the favor of the elders of high-rank sects and had a meteoric rise. In short, everyone had their own brilliance. Only the people who had been sitting on the rostrum for the past 3 days were torturous. According to the rules, the members on the rostrum were not allowed to leave their seats during the opening ceremony. Once they went on stage, they had to wait for the show to end. The design of this rule was originally to restrict the higher-ups of both sides from appearing at the same time, so that the other side would not be on tenterhooks. When the Dixians saw this, they all agreed, but who would have thought that it would become a forbidden spell that restricted their movements? As long as they still recognized the validity of the rules of the grand competition, no matter how dissatisfied they were, they could only stay on the field to enjoy the show. Thus, when the organizing committee of the Wuxia League Grand Competition fully operated the training, more than 80% of the Dixian in the Tombs of Immortals could only sit on the rostrum outside the arena and watch Wang Lu copy the novel for 3 days. This kind of psychological torture was self-evident. Therefore, after 3 days, there was a Dixian who could not hold back, stood up and roared angrily. "What the hell, how long does he want to write? It's been 3 days already?" Originally, the whole opening ceremony was expected to be less than a day, right? Even if he wants to delay the time, he has delayed it long enough. In this regard, the cultivators of the Wuxia League just looked at him and turned a deaf ear. Xianmo sighed and reached out to pull him so that he would stop talking. 3 days? Perhaps the other side wanted to delay it for 3 months or even 3 years. At the last pre-competition meeting, the strength that Wang Lu showed was simply astonishing. The cultivators of the Wuxia League had really made great progress during this period. However, if they wanted to overwhelm the Dixian in the arena, they had to do at least a few more years of targeted training. After all, Wang Lu's strength was only a special case. Xianmo had previously made an assessment with his companions who were good at deduction. The conclusion was that unless the Wuxia League was given more than a year, the overall advantage of the Dixian should be unshakable. However, now it seemed that the Wuxia League was also aware of this, so they had this shameless delaying tactic. As for the delay, of course, the longer the better. Let's wait for 2 more days. If it's still like this, I will take measures. Since Xianmo had said so, even if other people still had objections, they had to keep it for the time being. However, people were also suspicious. With Xianmo's easygoing personality, if the situation did not change after 2 days, what could she do? Thus 2 days passed in a flash. Unsurprisingly, the situation did not change at all. Wang Lu was still writing in front of the table. One after another, freshly written manuscripts were carried by the sword wind he flicked out, slowly and smoothly flying off the table. The thin paper covered the soft lawn, gently swaying with the breeze, but it did not fly up with the wind. Instead, it was firmly stuck to the ground by an invisible force. In 2 days, Wang Lu had copied thousands of pages. In addition to the thousands of pages of manuscripts that he had copied in the past few days, they were all scattered on the ground after he broke them up, forming a vast expanse of black and white words. Those who didn't know this might think that he was showing off his calligraphy, but the cultivators on the rostrum could see that Wang Lu was taking the opportunity to practice his primal chaos heaven-splitting sword. The primal chaos heaven-splitting sword Qi, which was hard and fierce, was now being controlled by him like a gentle wind. It gently lifted the thin paper from the table to the lawn, and then gently pressed them down. His strength was neither too light nor too heavy, just right. If it was a bit weaker, the paper would be blown away by the wind. If it was too heavy, it would crush the tender grass under the paper, staining the manuscript with grass juice. At the same time, he had to forcibly soften this fierce sword Qi so that it would not cut the paper. At the same time, Wang Lu's vigorous writing on the table was also a kind of cultivation. This program was nominally a calligraphy performance, and Wang Lu had indeed come up with a good calligraphy that did not disgrace the reputation of Spirit Sword Sect's top student. Although his writing was fast, every word was written with full concentration, integrating his own understanding of the way of the sword into it. Purely in terms of calligraphy, Wang Lu had not yet reached the next level. In the eyes of the great calligraphers in the mortal world, he was still very immature. However, coupled with his unique and awe-inspiring sword Qi, he impressively stood in a realm that was difficult for any mortal world's great master to reach. This calligraphy performance was indeed well-deserved. In the next 5 days, Wang Lu's handwriting became more and more aggressive. The silver hook and iron paintings showed their sharpness, like a thin sword densely covered on the paper. Using calligraphy to nourish the sword intent, and then using thin paper to sharpen the sword Qi, Wang Lu seemed to be doing a boring plagiarist, but his sword cultivation was growing day by day. However, this scene had another meaning in the eyes of the supremes of the Wanxian League. Behind he too, a red-robed old man sighed and said, "I remember more than 500 years ago, when I first embarked on the road of immortal cultivation, my humble sect's patriarch once said that there are geniuses in the world that we can't reach. At that time, I was proud and arrogant, relying on my heavenly spirit root qualification to be insufferably arrogant. I asked him, is there a spirit root of a higher grade than the heavenly spirit root in the world? Is there a peerless comprehension that I can't even catch up to? My patriarch said that my spirit root and comprehension are the best in the world. Even if there is someone stronger than me, there is a limit to their strength. I then asked him, if that's the case, is there anyone I can't reach? At this point, the surrounding supremes became interested and listened attentively. The red-robed old man continued, at that time my patriarch told me that the scary thing isn't that someone is smarter than you, but that someone smarter than you works harder than you. I'm not convinced. With my passion for immortal cultivation, how can there be someone more hardworking than me? The supremes secretly nodded. This red-robed old man had cultivated for more than 500 years and was a peerless master who was half a step above the peak of the body integration realm. His talent and comprehension were extraordinary, and he cultivated very hard. He never married or had children in his life, and he didn't have any special hobbies. He devoted himself to cultivation wholeheartedly. It was really unbelievable that someone could be more hardworking than him. My patriarch said that it's impossible for cultivators to have a smooth journey. There will always be some kind of obstacle that will force you to stop cultivating. Cultivators can abstain from eating and sleep, but it's impossible for a person to go into seclusion from birth. They have to gain experience and travel. During this period, their cultivation can only be intermittent. However, he said that there are true geniuses in the world who can turn any situation into training for themselves. They can use any place as their training ground and training room. Now, I think that Wang Lu has the temperament that my patriarch spoke of. Fellow Taoist Feng Yin, your sect has really received a treasure. Feng Yin smiled. Patriarch is really overpraising me. This child, Wang Lu, is far from incessant cultivation. In the past 20 years he has wasted a lot of time. Although he has earned a lot of fame through a few experiences, it has more or less delayed his cultivation. The red-robed patriarch shook his head and said, the past is the past and the future is the future. He is now standing on that path and I have been diligently pursuing that path for 500 years, but I still can't get it. If I can go back to 20 years ago, I will take this child into my sect no matter what. Haha, Patriarch, if you want to say that, you have to be behind me. A few years ago, I told fellow Taoist Feng Yin that if time can really go back in this world, the first thing I will do is to go back to the time before their Lingjin School's grand immortal gathering. Then even if I have to cheat and kidnap, I will pull Wang Lu into our sect. On the side of the Wanxian League, several Supremes were talking and laughing, surrounding Wang Lu and talking about all kinds of things. On the other side of the rostrum, the Dixian people were getting more and more restless. 2 days had passed, but no matter how they looked at it, Xian Mo did not come up with any effective way to stop the opponent from unscrupulously stalling for time. Xian Mo, did you forget what you said 2 days ago? Xian Mo sighed softly. Of course I won't forget. Indeed, it's time to take measures. I am attending a wedding, so I can't add updates on the weekend. Please forgive me. Then I will continue to Amway the WeChat public platform. Welcome to Follow Me, search for His Majesty the King. Thank you for your support. Chapter 631. 2 days ago, I asked everyone to restrain themselves, so now it's my turn to clean up this situation. After that, Xian Mo stood up and stretched his arms, as if he wanted to hold something in his arms. At the same time, the Wanxian League Supremes on the other side of the rostrum also stopped talking and looked at Xian Mo at the same time, each of them on guard. Obviously, the Dixian Supremes were impatient and were about to take action. No matter what their action was, it would not be beneficial to the Wanxian League. Therefore, when it was necessary to stop it, they would not hesitate to confront the Dixian Supremes head-on. However, when the situation was tense, Wang Wu stood up and said, "Hey, you're not going to be crazy enough to directly interfere with the performance, are you?" Xian Mo chuckled and said, "If you don't intend to abide by the rules, we don't need to wait for so long. Don't worry, we won't violate any rules." As she spoke, the power gathered in front of her chest became more and more powerful. It was above any cultivator in the Wanxian League, beyond the peak of the Unity stage, and could even be regarded as the top power in the Mahayana stage. The perfected lords present had no doubt that if this power were to be unleashed, no one would be able to withstand it alone. Therefore, he too, Feng Yin, and the other sect leaders of the major sects connected their magic power at the same time, ready to join forces to fight against the enemy. At the same time, the Dixian Supremes felt the tit-for-tat momentum and also responded one after another, either by taking out their immortal treasures or simply chanting incantations. Golden patterns appeared on their skin, and their fighting spirit burned like flames. A war had already stepped on the edge. As the initiator, Xian Mo smiled helplessly and said, "Don't be so hostile, everyone. Please take back your immortal treasures and immortal techniques. We really don't need to waste precious power on each other." Wang Wu said, "That's right. Then please explain, what are the essence chi balls you gathered in front of your chest for? Is it to liven up the atmosphere?" Xian Mo said, "There's no harm in saying that I'm here to stop this farce. The rules clearly state that external forces are not allowed to interfere with the competition." Xian Mo smiled and said, "That is indeed the case, but on the other hand, the rules have never said that we are not allowed to interfere with the arena itself." As he spoke, the power in front of Xian Mo's chest finally finished accumulating, and a tremendous force that could shake an entire province exploded with a loud bang. At the same time, several Supremes subconsciously tried to use spells to stop it. However, the difference in level and quality caused these spells to be bounced off by an irresistible force. People could only watch helplessly as this huge force erupted and enveloped the entire arena in the blink of an eye. However, his power did not seep in. As promised, Xian Mo would not interfere with the battle with external forces. What did she do? The same question actually remained in the hearts of the Earth Immortals. Although they had been good friends who had fought side by side 16,000 years ago, as the top cultivators of the continent, each of them had more or less secrets. And they would tacitly not touch these sensitive areas. What Xian Mo did just now was obviously showing one of her trump cards, but what was the meaning of this trump card? In the silence, the red-robed patriarch suddenly said, "Wait, is it my illusion? Why do I feel that? Wang Lu's writing speed seems to have become faster?" Upon hearing this, the several Supremes next to him fixed their eyes on Wang Lu. They saw Wang Lu bending over the table on the lawn, writing at a rapid speed. His wrist shook like a phantom and one by one the manuscript paper flew down from the table. It seems, it is indeed a little faster, but it's nothing strange. Maybe Wang Lu's sword intent has made a breakthrough again, so she can't help but write like a dragon and forget to control the time? After watching for a while, the red-robed patriarch said in horror, Wang Lu is not the only one who is fast. Look at the fallen leaves in the surrounding forest. Yes, the falling leaves are also falling faster. Wait a minute, could it be? At this moment, even Hichu Daoren was shocked. Time distortion? Rumor has it that when immortal technique was cultivated to the extreme, it could distort time. The immortal tea that Immortal Qin used to suppress the Six Supremes was one of the outstanding examples. However, in the recorded history of 9 regions, there were only a few examples of miracles like the immortal tea. Moreover, all of them were born in the heyday of the immortal path, when it was extremely prosperous. After the age of chaos, the immortal path declined, and it was only in the past 1,000 years that the decline was reversed. With the cultivation base of modern people, it was almost impossible to reproduce the power of immortals. Even Hichu Daoren, who had the highest cultivation base, could only affect the passage of time to a small extent. Moreover, there was no hope of reversing the flow of time, only speeding it up or slowing it down. However, at this moment, right in front of them, a large-scale time distortion phenomenon was actually happening. Xian Mo accelerated the time in the entire arena, and it was getting faster and faster. In the eyes of He Tu and the others, Wang Lu was not only moving his pen as if it was flying, but his whole person had turned into a group of blurred phantoms. They saw that on the table, the draft paper flowed down like a waterfall, covering the lawn. And the red sun that was previously on the horizon was constantly climbing up at a speed that was discernible to the naked eye. At least 10 times faster. Soon, the red-robed patriarch calculated the acceleration multiplier of Xian Mo. The multiplier was not particularly exaggerated, but this was a time distortion phenomenon that spread throughout the entire arena and lasted for an unknown time. To exaggerate a bit, under the theory of immortal cultivation in 9 regions, this phenomenon was simply impossible to exist. Is this really not against the rules? The red-robed patriarch asked. She interfered with the entire arena, and her power did not penetrate the inside of the arena. Therefore, Wang Lu didn't even notice the abnormality. At most, it can only be regarded as an edge ball. Wang Wu said, but speaking of edge ball, isn't Wang Lu's action the same? Therefore, we don't have enough position to accuse each other of anything. It's just that everyone has their own means. At time acceleration, she's awesome. But it's just 10 times faster. Wang Wu inwardly sneered, so what if it's 10 times faster? Yes, the super-long novel that was regarded as a classic by Wang Lu was not infinite in length. So far, the length was about 20 million words, which was appalling. Wang Lu's copying speed was 100,000 words a day, which was far above that of an ordinary person. And after 10 times faster, it was 1 million words a day. A series of 20 million words could be copied in only 20 days. This might seem a bit long for Dixian, but in the Wanxian League, it was too short. 20 days was far from enough for those contestants to make a qualitative breakthrough. Wang Lu's own expected time was more than 1 year. How to make up for the huge gap between 20 days and 1 year? Very simple, it depended on creative ability. Because the novel was not finished, so far the plot was completely open and no one knew what would happen next. Therefore, when Wang Lu finished copying the existing part, he would start writing on his own. As for Wang Lu's creative ability, Wang Wu did not doubt it at all. A few years ago, when the master and disciple lived together happily on Non-Phase Peak, it was common for the master and disciple to cheat each other. And Wang Lu often wrote his master's ***** novels as a means of revenge. And the plot design in those doujin novels was full of fantastic ideas, which made Wang Wu, the person involved, amazed. She couldn't stop reading it and even lost her appetite. She had to see clearly what kind of ***** she had encountered in the novel before she could feel at ease. And this was the most hateful thing about Wang Lu. Not only did he write ******, but every time he would never finish it. He would always come to the point where his passion surged and his sword would come to an abrupt stop. And when Wang Wu questioned him with the previous drafts, Wang Lu sneered, "Bitch, you want to have a climax? No way." Never finishing a novel was undoubtedly a bad habit in the eyes of ordinary people, but in the current situation, it was simply a rare divine skill. It was best if Wang Lu could maintain his creative energy for 100 years. He would write until the seas dried up and the rocks crumbled, or until that pretentious black-clothed Dixian couldn't hold it anymore and came out to stop. On the other side, after the time distortion, Xian Mo sat down wearily. Her body couldn't help but tremble, and beads of sweat began to flow from her forehead. Time distortion for a first-class Dixian like her was also an extremely heavy burden. Just now she tried her best and even her immortal spirit was almost unstable, but finally she completed the immortal technique. Among the effects of this immortal technique, 90% of it was a trick. Distorting time had always been a supreme masterpiece of the immortal Tao. Although Xianemo had studied this art quite a bit, she could not be considered a top-notch great master. In the past, immortal Qin could only use a pot of immortal tea, so how could she surpass immortal Qin? The key to this immortal technique was to borrow strength to fight strength, and it was very fragile in nature. There were 3 weaknesses. First, there couldn't be an existence that was too strong in the field. The stronger the existence, the stronger the influence on time and space, and the more difficult it was to interfere. If there was a supreme level cultivator in the field, it would be difficult for her to speed up by 20 to 30%. Second, the changes in the field couldn't be too intense. For example, moving mountains and filling seas, lightning and thunder would greatly affect the time distortion. However, Wang Lu chose the quietest and most peaceful performance. His violent sword energy was restrained in thousands of thin sheets of paper, and the impact on time distortion was minimized. Third, there was only one living being in the field, and the time distortion immortal technique was most afraid of too many people. With every additional person, the effect of the immortal technique would be halved, and it would be almost ineffective if there were more than 3 to 5 people. Fortunately, the Wanxian League didn't know much about immortal techniques, so they didn't see the flaws. Right now, the field was accelerated by 10 times, but as time passed, the effect of time distortion would continue to increase, until it was 20 times, 30 times, or even 100 times. According to Wang Lu's daily copying of 100,000 words, no matter how monumental it was, it would only take a few days to finish it. With this thought, Xianemo restrained her immortal spirit, and her eyelids were already very heavy. Before going to sleep, she didn't forget to remind the people around her. "Help me keep an eye on him, don't let him play tricks after he finishes." Her companions laughed and said, "Don't worry, you've already done this much, how can we hold you back?" Thus, Xianemo fell into a deep sleep with some peace of mind. When she opened her eyes again, it was already 20 days later. Xianemo was surprised by the length of her immortal sleep this time, and the backlash from the time distortion was even more than she expected. She thought that after the black and white combination, her strength would rise to another level. It seemed that 16,000 years of sleep had caused her to degenerate a lot. On the other hand, 20 days had passed and no one had woken her up? When did they become so patient? Then she heard a conversation that she couldn't understand at all. Interesting. I didn't expect that after this ordeal the main character's level didn't decrease, but increased instead. He's already reached level 5,000. I think he'll be able to join hands with his allies in the next battle and sweep the Saint Spirit realm. But the 3 Saint Spirits are all above level 6,000, so it won't be easy to win this battle. But the main character's equipment level is higher, and he has a large number of demon pets. The advantage in numbers can't be underestimated. Anyway, let's cast our recommendation votes and monthly votes first. I'll say in advance, starting from 0 is just a joke in this book, don't go too deep into the settings. Chapter 632. You guys, what are you talking about? Xianemo couldn't sort out her thoughts even after 2 breaths of time. Even with her surging immortal spirit, she couldn't wash away the doubts in her mind. 20 days had passed, and the scene in front of her didn't seem to have changed much. In the novel, Wang Lu's figure turned into a phantom and kept writing. Hundreds of thousands of papers had been written, and they neatly covered the lawn like a snowfield in winter. On the rostrum, the immortals of the Wanxian League were still watching silently. On the other side, the Dixian immortals were watching the novel with rapt attention and discussing it with each other. Hearing Xianmo's words, the Dixian immortals replied without turning their heads, "Of course, we're discussing the plot. Oh, the battle of the 3 holy spirits has finally begun. The main character's side is indeed powerful, crushing all the enemies. The great holy spirit has used his hidden ultimate skill. As expected, the strength of the antagonist is not to be underestimated. You won't just wait for death?" Xianemo asked. "Are you guys reading the novel from 0? What else can it be? I've never seen such an exciting novel in my life. Hey Xianemo, you're awake." Xianemo was so angry that she laughed. "Ha, you just realized it. I asked you to help me keep an eye on Wang Lu and not let him play tricks. What are you doing now?" After being yelled at by Xianemo, the Dixian immortals finally came back to their senses and pretended to be enlightened. Then one of them explained the whole story to Xianemo with a bitter smile. That day when Xianemo fell asleep, the rest of the Dixian immortals began to keep an eye on Wang Lu to prevent him from playing tricks again. According to their expectation, Wang Lu would run out of writing in 1 or 2 days under the condition of 10 times or dozens of times the speed of writing. However, after 3 days the story was still going on. When Wang Lu wrote, he looked intoxicated and couldn't stop. This guy can't be writing nonsense to fool us, right? Come to think of it, no matter what kind of long serial it was, there should be nothing left to write after 40 to 50 million words. What the hell was he writing now? Therefore, the Dixian began to seriously read his newly written words, trying to find the gaps and inconsistencies. As a result, when we come back to our senses, it will be the same as before. Xianemo was completely convinced. You guys are all great Dixian immortals, and your immortal hearts are strong and pure, almost no less than that of the true immortals of the upper realm. Yet, you guys were captivated by a novel he casually wrote. The Dixian quickly explained, of course not, but when we watched it from the beginning to the end for the first time, we found that his plot was really coherent and there were no gaps. There was no way to stop him midway. So, I could only continue watching until he ran out of ideas. Who knew that he would be able to maintain the storyline without collapsing at the rate of 10 million words a day? Xianemo was also shocked. 10 million words a day and it didn't collapse. How is that possible? Usually, a novel with hundreds of thousands of words is considered long. Hasn't he written hundreds of millions of words by now? What is he writing? If you want to talk about the storyline, it's simple. It's nothing more than leveling up and killing people. However, every once in a while the novel will release some new expansion pack, which will suddenly increase the depth of the story. When there is no more expansion pack to release, he will design its server reload. In short, it's to let the characters return to their original state, and the plot will start all over again. Xianemo heard this and quickly interrupted. Isn't this kind of rough handling of the plot worth stopping? This is clearly deliberately delaying the plot. Dixian smiled bitterly. But the server reload is to save one of the male protagonist's lovers. Although their levels are all reset, the person who was supposed to die has survived, and even their predestined fate has been changed. Plus, they have experienced the path of leveling up from 0. The price is completely acceptable. This is possible? Then how long will it take to write this? Dixian said, we are also guessing how long it will take to write from 0. Currently, people who are good at deduction have given the result that it will take at least 1 year. 1 year? This is under the situation where the speed is accelerated by 100 times. Doesn't that mean that if no one stops him, he can write for 100 years? The Earth Immortals nodded in admiration. Yes, this young man is really a peerless genius. Xianemo couldn't help but sigh. This is ridiculous. With that, she stood up again and was ready to condense the immortal aura in front of her. However, as soon as she moved, she was stopped by her companion. Don't be impulsive. If you do it again, your immortal aura will collapse. But it's enough. At this point, no one can criticize you anymore. Next, wait for Black to show up. Black. Of course, Xianemo knew that as long as Black was willing to show up, any problem would no longer be a problem. However, it was precisely because she couldn't guess his mind that she was anxious. Black regarded himself as a sinner. Since his defeat in the rebellion against the fallen immortals, his attitude towards Dixian seemed to be indifferent. Sometimes, even when Dixian's career encountered great setbacks, he didn't come forward to help. Therefore, Xianemo couldn't guarantee that if Wang Lu continued to delay endlessly, Black would come forward to stop him. That was why she spared no effort to make a move. So now, did she really have to resign herself to fate? While Xianemo was still tangled, several Dixian had been immersed in the magnificent world of starting from 0 again. Hey, the 3 holy spirits have been defeated while we were talking. So, the protagonist can finally get the Mirror of Nirvana to restart the world line and let the Daughter of the Earth be reborn, right? The plot that I've been looking forward to for 100 million words is finally going to start. Xianmo's hair stood on end. Restarting the world line? Moreover, it's the protagonist who deliberately restarted it? What kind of plot has developed? Moreover, it took 100 million words just to restart the world line? Could 1 year really stop Wang Lu? Speaking of which, while sharpening his sword chi, he could also create 10 million words a day. According to Wang Lu's timeline, he had been standing still in the field and writing for several years. This tenacity was simply incredible. At the same time, several other Dixian felt deeply worried about this. Not everyone could be as heartless as the several Dixian in the front row, immersed in the plot of the novel. The more wonderful and long Wang Lu's novel was, the more worried they were. The grand competition had not yet officially begun, but the opening ceremony was already full of twists and turns, which made the situation completely out of control. What should they do next? On the rostrum, there was another unbearable silence. Time went by bit by bit. 1 day, 2 days. The black never appeared. Some Dixians such as Bai Zhe who looked on coldly from the sidelines also showed no expression, as if they were watching a good show. Just when Xian Mo was beginning to despair about the current situation, things took a turn for the better. Because Wang Lu suddenly stopped in the field. His stop was so abrupt that many people present were caught off guard. What's wrong? Why did he stop? Yeah, he's about to do the double cultivation with the 47 revolutions of the mysterious daughter of the 9 heavens. Why did he stop? Xian Mo also widened his eyes, puzzled by the situation in the field. Because Wang Lu seemed to be in the right state. His sword intent had been nourished to be sharp and fierce. His sword chi was both hard and soft, and his immortal heart had also become meticulous under the training of the long-term distraction serial. It was the moment when he cultivated to his heart's content, and he had just finished rebooting the world line for the 47th time from zero. He was about to get married with his former nemesis, his current lover, the Empyrean fairy of the 9 heavens. The plot was reaching its climax, so why would he stop? From any point of view, there was no reason for him to stop, but he did. But why? At this time, the number 1 king pill in 9 regions from the Wanxian League suddenly jumped up and said, "What the hell? Wang Lu UB*TC, you're really addicted to being a eunuch. Every time you write a sex scene you always do this. Now you finally eat your own medicine. When it's time to push the mysterious daughter of the 9 heavens, you subconsciously become a eunuch, ha ha ha. What kind of reason is that?" Xian Mo was puzzled, but he would not miss this opportunity. He immediately stood up and said, "Enough, since we've exhausted our talent, then let's stop this show." As soon as his voice fell, he heard his companions exclaim, "You can't do that." "Yes, Sister Xian Mo, the plot is at the critical point, you can't just stop like that, it's too suspenseful. I won't have any appetite. If I keep thinking about this plot, I will have obstacles in my heart in the future, and I will have no hope of becoming an immortal." Xian Mo angrily scolded. "Reading a novel and you're already filled with inner demons, you don't need to cultivate the immortal path. You can't put it like that. I didn't choose this path of the immortal Tao myself." Xian Mo had a headache. To put it nicely, this group of mischievous people had pure immortal hearts and were carefree, but to put it bluntly, they were just idiots. Although they were strong, they were really difficult to control. However, before Xian Mo had a headache, Wang Lu took the initiative to jump out after a moment of hesitation. With the departure of the main character, this month-long calligraphy performance naturally came to an end. When he walked to the rostrum, Wang Lu looked 70% unsatisfied, 20% self-deprecating, and 10% dejected. With Wang Lu's temperament, there were not many things that could make him feel dejected, so it was clear that it was not his intention to end the series from zero. The perfected immortals of the Wanxian League immediately asked, "Wang Lu, was there an external force that interfered with your creation?" "Oh no, copying?" Wang Lu sighed helplessly, then shrugged and said, "It has nothing to do with outsiders, it's my own idiocy that made a mistake. I prepared everything in advance but I didn't bring enough paper." "What? You didn't bring enough paper?" Wang Lu said, "Yeah, it's an idiotic reason, isn't it? I put millions of pieces of paper in my mustard seed bag, thinking that it would be enough or even more. Who would have thought that I was forced to stop because I didn't bring enough paper?" Before he could finish, Dixian dashed over from the side with a big stack of paper in his hand. "I have paper here. You can have as much as you want. Please make sure to continue writing the book." This enthusiasm shocked Wang Lu. "You are?" Dixian said enthusiastically, "I'm your loyal reader." Ah. The Earth Immortal then took out 2 jade slips that were rich in spiritual energy. "These are the edited versions that I personally compiled from scratch. Not only have they integrated all the chapters that you have updated, but they have also corrected the occasional typos. Oh no fake words. I made 2 copies. I'll give you one for your collection and I'll have to trouble you to sign the other one, okay?" Wang Lu nodded in silence and then signed his name on one of the jade slips. Zhang'er Iron Whip. "Although I'm exhausted, there's still a second update, please vote for me." Chapter 633. After Wang Lu signed his pen name, that Dixian immediately held the jade piece and showed it off to his companions. "Haha, I have his signature." Then he ran back like a wisp of smoke. Please, you must finish writing this unparalleled novel from scratch. I'm a bit, it's okay, we understand. You've been writing for so long, so you should take a break. But we will always look forward to it. Wang Lu held the jade piece in his hand and watched him gradually go away. At the same time, he could vaguely feel that there was a fanatical belief gathering outside the rostrum. Wang Lu was the wisdom sect leader, so he was very clear that this force was the legendary power of faith. The problem was, where did he get this power of faith? His identity as the wisdom sect leader had gradually faded, and he didn't attach much importance to the power of faith. Then, could it be that this power that came from his reader group? He had been writing his book in the arena for many years, but in the end, not only did he delay the time, he also gathered a lot of fans? This was really a pleasant surprise, but the most important thing right now was not this. Wang Lu frowned. He had already noticed the strange atmosphere here. TSK, no wonder I felt something was wrong. Why are you still here? With your patience, you can't possibly wait for me to write my book for so many years, right? How long has it been here? Wang Wu said with a deeply painful expression of being suspected by a close relative. 1 month? TSK, only 1 month? That doesn't reflect this old man's endurance and tenacity at all. I feel like I've been here for 5 or 6 years. But, from another point of view, in just 1 month I've achieved 5 or 6 years worth of cultivation results, which is actually a blessing in disguise. Hey, it sounds like you're quite confident in your own cultivation results. Could it be that after 5 or 6 years of cultivation, your dagger has grown a bit longer? Being ridiculed viciously, Wang Lu narrowed his eyes and prepared to launch a fierce counterattack. Speaking of which, it had been a while since the master and disciple quarreled. Did this be Tish think that after being distorted by time for 5 or 6 years in the arena, his culinary skills had become rusty? However, before Wang Lu could open his mouth, Xianemo interrupted him coldly. Are you done with your idle chatter? Are there any more programs after this? If it's gone, this farce can end, right? Wang Lu hurriedly said, Of course not. The program list has been handed over to you. There's still a group crosstalk left. Please be patient. Then hurry up. Wang Lu immediately gestured for the last group to appear on stage. Speaking of which, this group of people had worked hard, waiting outside for Wang Lu for a month. Because Wang Lu wasn't sure how long his calligraphy could be delayed. If he was lucky, he could delay it for 1.5 years. If he was unlucky, the performance would be broken or stopped by the Dixian the moment it started. Therefore, the next group of people had to be on guard outside from the beginning. Although the actors' lounge was spacious, it was imaginable how difficult it was to live in seclusion for a month. When they went on stage, all of them looked miserable as if they had been constipated for many years. Fortunately, their attire was at least in accordance with Wang Lu's requirements. A plain monochrome gown and a stiff smile without any sincerity were the faces of the group crosstalk actors. When they walked from backstage to the stage, there was an uproar outside. Many people suspected that Lingjian School was going to perform the Blue River region's traditional folk art of driving corpses. If there was anything worth mentioning about these crosstalk actors, it would be the large number of people. 1, 2, 3, 4. The actors entered the stage in a long line. Just entering the stage took the time to finish a meal. In the end, there were 600 to 700 actors standing on the stage. As long as 1/10 of the people inside were whispering, the hall would become noisy, and the people outside could only hear the chaos, scratching their heads in confusion. Although the program list said it was a group crosstalk, who had ever heard of 600 to 700 people? Hey Xiaolei, have you heard of group crosstalk? The Dixian named Xiaolei smiled bitterly and said, Sister Xianemo, I have heard of it, but I was only interested in it when I was a mortal. If you ask me about it, I can't say anything. It's just that the group crosstalk I have heard of mostly only 3 to 5 people. This scale is really unheard of. Perhaps in the past 16,000 years, there has been a great innovation in the art form. After listening to this, Xianemo came to a conclusion. What *T innovation in the art form? It must be that Wang Lu has a new plot. Thinking of this, Xianemo was shocked again. Could it be that Wang Lu had already calculated my means, so he arranged such a program? Although 99% of these 600 to 700 people were mortals, and most of them were weak, there was no way her time distortion could be effective with such a large number of people. Therefore, no matter what tricks the other party played, it would be too late and there was nothing she could do. While she was in a dilemma, the program officially began. Hello everyone, today we will perform a crosstalk for everyone. Among the 600 to 700 people, an old man in the middle said with a trembling voice. His hair and beard were all silver and he was as thin as a match. His thin body made his joints bulge, and it was unknown whether it was the strength of an artist or bone hyperplasia. However, it was obvious that this old man was quite prestigious among the performers. After a while, someone beside him stood up and said with a smile, "The name of the crosstalk is called New Year's Greeting." Then another person stood up and said with the same smile, "The so-called New Year's greeting is a cultural tradition that has been passed down for a long time in our 9 regions." Then one by one the group of crosstalk performers quickly explained the ins and outs of the tradition of New Year's greeting. Some of the audience who didn't know what was going on felt that they had vaguely learned something, but most of them were inexplicable. Xianemo whispered to the one named Xiaolei, "Is group crosstalk like this?" Xiaolei said, "That's not right at all. The crosstalk I've heard is basically a few performers amusing each other, and sometimes they will sing a few paragraphs. This kind of long explanation. Maybe there is, but there is no need to deliberately divide it into sentences and say one sentence for one person. What is this? We just explained to everyone what New Year's greeting is. Why do we have to explain it like this?" Xiaolei quickly patted Xianemo on the shoulder and said, "Sister Xianemo, listen, they are going to explain." As a result, when Xianemo turned her gaze, the person who spoke had changed. "Because if you don't understand these things, it's easy to make a fool of yourself." Then a person next to her turned his head, not to the person who just spoke but to the other side. "What kind of joke?" The person on the other side immediately said, "For example, I know a person named Zhang San. He doesn't know what New Year's greeting is, so he made a fool of himself." Another person behind that person asked, "What kind of joke did Zhang San make?" A newcomer stood up and said, "One day, Zhang San went out to visit his relatives." Next, more than 100 people finished Zhang San's story in the form of dialogue. The gist of it was nothing more than a misunderstanding caused by Zhang San's wrong words when he visited his relatives. Everyone laughed at him, and then an elder came forward to point out Zhang San's mistake. He taught Zhang San to earnestly study the excellent traditional culture and become a useful talent for the country and society. Zhang San was ashamed and excited, and said that he would definitely follow the elder's instructions and work hard. As the story was being told, Xianemo felt uncomfortable all over. This kind of one-sentence conversation as well as their stiff, fake smiles, it was as if there was an invisible will that played these 600 to 700 people like puppets in the palm of its hand. This feeling simply caused a chill to run down one's spine. Not to mention laughing, Xianemo felt as if a gust of demonic wind from the depths of hell had blown by her side, and it blew to the point her soul core and body froze. She was silent for a long time and asked, "Xiaolei, what do you think about this performance? Is it because I can't catch the funny part?" Xiaolei said after some deliberation, "I have a feeling that this story is not a joke." "Then can you explain what is going on with those 2 people? Xianemo pointed to the side, only to see Wang Lu and Wang Wu rolling on the ground without any care for their image, and letting out creepy laughter. The 2 people kept laughing even to the point of tears. As Xianemo listened to the crosstalk story and the 2 people's heartfelt laughter, he could not help but wonder if it was a mistake for him not to be able to laugh. Xiaolei was tongue-tied. He wanted to say that the 2 people's brain circuits were different from ordinary people, and that it was not unusual for them to do anything, but listening to the exaggerated laughter, he could not say anything. "I don't really understand." Other than Xiaolei, Dixian did not understand anything else. What was so funny about the story just now? Could it be that the art form of later generations has evolved to a level that our aesthetics can no longer control? Could it be that there was a burden in the last lines that only later generations could understand? But then again, besides the 2 of them, Supreme He too, the red-robed patriarch, and the others were also sitting upright and still, without a hint of laughter on their faces. What exactly was the problem? While he was puzzled, the crosstalk actors had already begun to carry out a deeper analysis of the previous story, from why young people did not know the good traditions all the way to the attitude towards foreign cultures. The audience had already begun to feel nauseous from listening to it, and then they were relieved to find that according to the format of one sentence per person, the 600 or 700 people seemed to be almost finished. In fact, they actually had to finish. From the beginning of the program until now, the 600 or 700 people had said one sentence per person for at least an hour. The younger ones were fine, but some of the virtuous old artists were almost unable to stand, and needed the support of 2 people beside them at the same time to stand up straight. Xianemo turned her head and glanced at Wang Lu. Unexpectedly, he did not delay the time on this program, but the next moment she watched dumbfoundedly as the people on the stage began to leave in an orderly manner. From the other side, another group of people in plain long gowns walked in, smiling and waving to the audience. Damn, there are actually substitutes. The work of sorting out the spiritual sword brief is still in progress. The pressure of rushing the manuscript is a little big, but rest assured that the reward will be given as agreed. Chapter 634. 1, 2, 3, 4. Soon, 600 or 700 people came in, filling up the original actor's position, and the dialogue actually continued. The last person from the previous formation waved goodbye to the audience as he walked out of the arena. At the same time, he said his line, and the new person finally found a chance to speak. Speaking of foreign culture, I know a person who particularly admires foreign culture, especially the culture from the Western continent. He admires it to the extreme. The actor who first spoke in the phalanx was also standing in the middle of the crowd. Obviously, his position was extraordinary, and his line was also longer than the average person. However, after that, he returned to the line and stood there with a stupid smile on his face. Following that, the 600 to 700 people told another joke about Li Si, who was overly respectful of foreign culture. It was also an absurd story, but it was told in a sinister manner. At the end of the story, there was also a large amount of preaching and propaganda. Similarly, there was not a single funny point in the entire story. However, there were two people on the rostrum who were rolling on the floor in laughter. Xian Mo couldn't bear it anymore. He got up and walked to Wang Lu's side. After hesitating for a moment, he squatted down and patted him on the shoulder. Hey, what's so funny about that story? At this time, Wang Lu was beating the floor. When he heard Xian Mo's question, he looked up and replied, ha ha ha, I ha 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 with you, ha ha ha, that ha 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 just now, ha ha ha, I have to finish laughing first. Xian Mo froze for a moment. I know, you can continue laughing. When she returned to her seat, she felt like she was being played as a fool. Soon after, the second phalanx finished its story and left the stage. The third phalanx entered the stage in an orderly manner. It was the same size of 600 or 700 people, and they also brought a new long story. The only difference was after the story was finished, Wang Lu and Wang Wu's laughter became a lot smaller. It seemed like for Taoist Master King Pil, laughing for more than 4 hours in a row was also a great burden. As Xian Mo thought of this, he glanced at Wang Lu and keenly noticed that Wang Lu seemed to have taken something out of his mustard seed bag and was about to put it into his mouth when he was rolling on the ground. As a Dixian, Xian Mo reacted very quickly. With a thought, he reached out his invisible hand and grabbed Wang Lu's hand, forcing him to show the thing in his hand. 2 plump and round elixirs. What is this? Xian Mo asked as he revealed the answer himself. Forget worries pill? A pill that can make people fall into extreme joy, forget all their troubles and laugh non-stop? So, this is what you are laughing at? Being caught red-handed in bed, Wang Lu could not deny it and could only get up from the ground. At the same time, he kicked his master who was still laughing non-stop, indicating that she should stop laughing. Ha ha, I ha ha ha, just ha ha ha, have already taken the ha 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 hop. Okay, then you can laugh slowly, Wang Lu sighed and then said to Xian Mo, actually, this is all a misunderstanding. Xian Mo wanted to slap him in the face. Do you really think you can fool us with this reason? Wang Lu said seriously, I am not fooling anyone, but I am trying my best to help some people who need help. Those actors who are sweating and performing crosstalk on the stage need our laughter and applause. So, even if I have to take drugs, I will give my laughter to them. Of course, it would be best if I could laugh without taking drugs, but unfortunately. So you also know that their crosstalk is not funny at all. Wang Lu said, well, as long as you are not an idiot, you will not find their crosstalk funny. But at least it is full of positive energy, a main theme, and very educational. Listen, they are talking about how to correctly treat foreign culture. Crosstalk is not for preaching, okay? Wang Lu said, this issue can be discussed later, but the problem now is that besides preaching, they don't know any other crosstalk. Then don't ask them to perform. Wang Lu shrugged and said, then they will starve to death. These actors are actually very pitiful. Except for this kind of unfunny crosstalk, they don't know any other kind of crosstalk. Before I found them to participate in the opening ceremony, most of them lived a hard life in their respective art circles. Fortunately, there are some monarchs who like art so they can still be attached to some places to make a living. But in fact, there are also some crosstalk actors who don't even have the qualification to be attached and are really starving to death. And then, I think this opening ceremony is an opportunity to show their situation in front of people. Believe me, compared with those crosstalk actors who gain both fame and fortune, these talents are more representative of the overall situation of 9 regions. So what? Wang Lu said, This opening ceremony is our union of 10,000 immortals showing you all the various things in 9 regions today. Compared to blindly showing off, I prefer to let you see the real 9 regions. In fact, don't you think these actors are a bit like us? Oh? Wang Lu pointed to an actor who was trying his best to perform his lines on the stage. Look at him. Although he only has one line, at least at the moment of his performance, that line is his everything. He will do his best. Xianmo glanced at the stage coldly. His expression is stiff, and he also mispronounced a word of his line. Is that all he can do? Yes, although it's not worth mentioning in our eyes, that's all they have. While speaking, Wang Lu waved his hand, and the scene in the arena suddenly changed. In addition to hundreds of people's one line of crosstalk, there were many more scenes. Xianmo's heart turned cold. According to the rules, no one was allowed to interfere with the scene during the show. Wang Lu just waved his hand and brought out a lot of scenes, not because he used some magical spell but because he had already calculated the time. In other words, could it be that he even calculated the dialogue at this moment? However, soon she had no time to think about these things, because the scenes in the arena had been extended. It recorded the daily life of those crosstalk actors. It was a daily life that she could not bear to look at. In a simple thatched hut, a woman in ragged clothes said in a hoarse voice, "Old Zhang's second brother and sister-in-law came again yesterday." The man named Old Zhang frowned. "Are they here to ask for money again? I told them that I will definitely pay them back. As long as Zhang Yuanwei holds another crosstalk meeting, I will be able to earn money to pay them back." The woman just sighed. When will Zhang Yuanwei hold another crosstalk meeting? And even if he does, will he invite you? Didn't you say the last performance wasn't funny at all? Old Zhang angrily slammed the table. I secretly learned the jokes from a famous master in the county. How can it not be funny? Moreover, it's educational through entertainment. Isn't Zhang Yuanwei's young master lawless and needs someone to persuade him to be kind? The woman opened her mouth but did not speak. Old Zhang became even angrier. I know what you want to say. It's useless to teach through entertainment, right? The jokes I learned aren't funny, right? Just you wait, I will come up with funny jokes in the next 2 days. Then the scene changed. It was Old Zhang stammering by a deserted river. Then that young man quickly turned his head. It didn't matter when he turned his head. Guess what? He saw his wife. After saying that, Old Zhang was stunned for a moment. He looked at the gurgling river, scratched his disheveled hair, and repeated himself. It didn't matter when he turned his head. Guess what? He saw his wife. After a moment of silence, Old Zhang opened his mouth again and repeated that sentence. He saw his wife. At this point, even he himself could clearly feel how boring this line was. So what if he saw his wife? What's so funny about it? There should be, right? But if there really is, why doesn't anyone laugh? Why has no one ever laughed at my crosstalk? I just want to do a crosstalk, I just want to hear people laugh. Why can't I? Ha. Suddenly he raised his head and laughed. His laughter echoed in the wilderness as if he was happy, but there was a sense of desolation in it. Halfway through his laughter, Old Zhang was already sobbing. Why isn't it funny at all? What? Then the story ended there. The scene changed, and it was a close-up of an actor who was reading his lines. It was Old Zhang, but compared to the story he looked much more energetic now. He was wearing a brand new plain robe without patches, and his beard and hair had been carefully trimmed. He looked 10 years younger, and even the wrinkles on his face seemed to have been wiped away. Although he only had one line at this moment, he poured all of his energy into it. It didn't matter when he turned his head. Guess what? He saw his wife. Ha. The last sentence made the 600 to 700 people in the arena laugh in unison. On the rostrum, Xianmo was already stunned. Outside the arena, the audience watching the show through the broadcast signboard was also shocked. What was going on with this shocking reversal? Why did those clumsy crosstalk actors suddenly light up the light of humanity? If the previous group crosstalk performance was just a disgusting farce, then looking at Old Zhang's smiling face, people suddenly felt a sense of warmth and gratification. Some people even couldn't help but smile a little. Wang Lu said proudly, "See, the audience has already used their expressions to give this show the fairest evaluation. This kind of praise that is completely out of sympathy and pity is something to be proud of? This is simply fraud." Wang Lu said, "How could it be fraud? Old Zhang is really just a clumsy craftsman, and I just displayed his clumsiness in a perfect manner. This kind of artistic display that is painted up means that it's not real in itself. So you also know that this is a display. This is a big show, a program, not a news interview. Don't you find it ridiculous that you doubt that I shouldn't have used artistic methods of expression? Xianemo was at a loss for words, especially when she saw that the few simple-minded Earth immortals around her had been deeply infected and began to laugh along with the laughter of the crosstalk actors on the stage. She really had nothing to say. All right, you win this time. Chapter 635. Exclusive Ancestral Secret Recipe, Lu's Sauced Meat, 1 Spirit Stone a Jar. A top-quality flying sword enchanted by a supreme immortal, reluctantly part with it, this opportunity will not come again. Cultivation Secret Manual personally passed down by a Taoist master of deity stage, 50,000 spirit stones non-negotiable price. In the wide square of B3 area, all kinds of people ran all kinds of businesses, ranging from spiritual treasures and secret manuals to daily necessities, cooking oil and salt. Enthusiastic businessmen, passers-by, and spectators who stopped to watch. All kinds of people set off the hustle and bustle of the open space created by the Dixian people. It had been 3 months since the opening of the City of Immortals, and tens of millions of people had entered this dreamy city. Then, like seeds that had taken root and sprouted here, the branches and leaves flourished. B3 area was just a small microcosm of a big background. Of course, for many people, the world in B3 area was vast enough that it was worth spending all their efforts to manage and explore it. Little mouse, have you found the 3 golden vine leaves that I want? Someone will deliver them in the afternoon at the earliest. Okay, don't urge me, I can't give you the golden vine leaves even if you urge me to death. Moreover, it's only been half a day, where do you want me to find the golden vine leaves for you? Humph, don't forget that I have to boil your 8 desolation 6 directions soup for you. If you delay my business, don't ever think about immortal cultivation again in this life. I know, you don't have to repeat it day after day. You dead face, why didn't I find out that you're so long-winded when we were in the suburbs? Okay, I'm going out to sweep the goods so you can look after the house with peace of mind. Also, shouldn't you find a chance to take a bath? The whole house is full of your stink. Get out of here. After scurrying out of the dark and damp semi-basement, the young man took a deep breath and felt that his lungs were once again filled with fresh air. He did a somersault in satisfaction and put on a cunning and quick-witted smile. The teenager was Shu Si, who came here on a whim 3 months ago. After being rescued by Wang Lu, he lived in the City of Immortals. The residents in A17 area provided daily necessities. The teenager, who used to be hungry in the suburbs, no longer had to worry about food and clothing. However, he soon discovered that compared to eating and sleeping in his room, the vast world outside was much more interesting. The City of Immortals was the fate of Dixian. Those high and mighty cultivators could be seen everywhere, and the density was even higher than in Fengdu City. Shu Si had always fantasized about being taken in as a disciple by a highly respected immortal, and from then on, embarking on the supreme path of immortality, living a carefree life. However, after wandering around the City of Immortals for several days, he realized that his idea was too simple. When he was in Fengdu City, he failed to meet his own immortal affinity, and now it was equally difficult in the City of Immortals. There were many highly respected immortals, but none of them were interested in him. The red and white cultivator he met on the first day was undoubtedly a good person, but soon he knew that the red and white cultivator was far from him. He was afraid that he would never see him again in this life. Moreover, although that person was famous, he was also controversial and had enemies everywhere. If he rashly said that he had something to do with him, he was afraid that he would be harmed instead. Shu Si wandered around the City of Immortals for a few days, but he didn't get much immortal affinity. Instead, he saw the approachability of the cultivators. Many cultivators were willing to condescend to talk to a mortal like him, and their lines were generally, "Smelly brat, get away from me. Mortal, don't block the way, be careful not to kill you. Don't you have eyes when you walk? Hee, this old man's spirit staff just so happens to be lacking a few living souls. I wonder if you're interested in coming into play?" Such words brimming with enthusiasm. Perhaps he really should have accepted his fate long ago. He was not the kind of lucky person with innate spirit root. In desperation, Shu Si had to be down to earth and find the person closest to the world of immortal cultivation, the dead face who helped him dispose of the stolen goods. Although the identity of the dead face was mysterious, he was undoubtedly a cultivator with spells. Shu Si found him, and after coaxing and pestering, he finally got the dead face to point out a way: artificial spirit root. If one wanted to cultivate without natural spirit root, artificial spirit root was the only way. Perhaps many high-rank sects didn't like it, but it was an indisputable fact that artificial spirit root was becoming more and more popular in 9 regions. It was just that, artificial spirit root, which was worthless to many cultivators, was too expensive and too rare for mortals. Fortunately, the dead face happened to have a bowl of 8 Desolation 6 Directions soup that he bought not long ago. It was a middle-rank man-made spirit root, and after taking it, one would have a middle-rank and low-rank spirit root. If one was talented, one would be able to reach shoot on stage in this lifetime, and if one had a fortuitous encounter, one might be able to break through the king pill. This decoction was not cheap, at least for Shu Si. It was a sky-high price that he would never be able to reach in his lifetime. However, he also happened to have a sky-high price prop in his hand, the person-seeking compass that Wang Lu gave him. Although the compass had an extraordinary meaning for him, the teenager who grew up alone in the alley knew how to be flexible. He mortgaged the compass to the dead face, and then promised to work for him and redeem the compass with his own salary. The dead face was silent for a long time and finally he agreed. At that time Shu Si laughed in his heart. Sure enough, he was not mistaken. Although the dead face looked cold and indifferent, he was actually very kind-hearted. However, it was difficult for Shu Si, who was used to idling around since he was a child, to have perseverance in a job. In the first few days he was still diligent, busy in the small shop of the dead face, but after a few days he began to dawdle on his work. For example, right now he was nominally going to the market in B3 area to sweep the goods, that is, to pick up some cheap goods. However, he soon ran to the sign in the center to watch the show. This was also one of the important entertainment activities for many residents of the City of Immortals in recent times. Today, it should be about the life and death farewell of that Zheng Shirlu and his lover. Zheng Shirlu's show is the most exciting in recent days. It would be a pity to miss it. While talking, Shu Si sat down under a tree in the square and looked up at the sky. If you don't believe me, I'll tell you a joke about the Western continent people paying a New Year's greeting, then you'll know what's going on. I really don't believe it. Tell me what's going on. In the center of the square, a huge signboard hung down. Originally, the words B3 area were written on it, but now it was replaced by a water curtain projection spell. On the water screen, hundreds of actors in plain robes were performing a program called group comedy. This group of crosstalk performers had been performing day and night for 2 months straight. In these 2 months, the number of crosstalk actors who appeared on stage was more than 30,000, all of whom were unsuccessful artists that Wang Lu used the power of the Wanxian League to collect from all over 9 regions in the shortest time. Most of these people originally lived on the starvation line and were in poverty. But now they were fortunate to participate in the opening ceremony of the grand competition, reaching the sky in a single bound. These people were divided into groups of 600 to 700 people, a total of 50 groups, and then took turns to go on stage. A complete rotation would take about 3 days. For these actors, the work intensity was not high, and it was not difficult to maintain. The crosstalk itself was boring. The educational but not funny crosstalk sounded like a kind of torture. However, outside of the crosstalk, the life stories that reflected the characters were particularly attractive. It stood to reason that this kind of unoriginal and insincere performance would soon be strongly resisted by the audience. However, Wang Lu had a pair of skillful hands that brought this group of crosstalk back to life and transformed it into a super popular show. Every time a group of actors appeared on stage, countless pictures would appear on the stage to show the bits and pieces of their lives, and one of them would be highlighted. In the first round, it was old Zhang who enjoyed the highlight treatment. Behind him was a young man who looked dull and taciturn. The story of this young man was different from that of old Zhang. He was not originally a crosstalk actor, but his younger brother was. Moreover, he was talented and could make people laugh when he opened his mouth. Unfortunately, heaven was jealous of talent. His younger brother died of an acute illness at the age of 20. His biggest regret at the time of his death was that he loved crosstalk so much, but the road of crosstalk was about to end. From then on, he would no longer be able to hear the laughter of the audience and see those sincere smiling faces. He still had many ideas about crosstalk. He created many jokes himself, but he could no longer show them to everyone. After that, the young man buried his younger brother, sold his family property, and began to study crosstalk hard. Although it was twice the effort with half the result, he persevered. He only hoped that one day he could tell these jokes to the world and then live in place of his younger brother. The young man who lived in the shadow of his younger brother received a lot of sympathy. Although he had a dull temperament and mediocre eloquence, he had a handsome appearance and melancholy eyes. And the sincere feelings between him and his younger brother, especially the many intimate scenes in their lives, such as the brothers rubbing each other's back when taking a bath, hugging each other to keep warm in the cold wind, made countless female audiences crazy, and the ratings of that episode of Group Crosstalk were also quite good. Such stories had emerged one after another in the past 2 months, and the form of expression was also rapidly evolving. At first, the program was just a simple clip of a person's life. Later, it was found that some complex stories were difficult to explain clearly in just 1 hour, so the serialized form was born. If a story was not finished in this round, it would wait for the same group to rotate 3 days later, and then continue to be played. This provided a richer space for the performance of the story, and thus there were more twists and turns of the story. Gradually, Group Crosstalk began to become popular in the City of Immortals. No matter which area, the most important way of entertainment for people was to look up and watch the stories of the Crosstalk actors. Today's group happened to be the turn to play the story of Zheng Shirlu, which was also the most popular story in recent times. I wish everyone a happy Christmas Eve. I look forward to everyone's full moon party in November next year. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.